OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
7:30 Friday morning. A very good morning to you, wherever it is you are at this morning. It's Adrian here and Johnny over there. Good morning to you, Johnny.
Good morning, Adrian.
How's life?
Not too bad. And yourself?
Nive na lehed arishaun.
Yeah, it's I think it was Tommaso Crumman, the island man. It's a famous statement about, as they left the Blasket Islands, our likes will never be around again. I bought it as an ironic thing.
About yourself?
Yeah, because thank God for that. But yeah,
the last man off, or
he wasn't. He may have passed away before that. Have you been to the Blaskets?
Yeah, I was out there on a stag do, funny enough, a few years ago.
How can you be in a stag? Like, there's no pub. There's nothing in the Blaskets.
It does. Why does everything need to focus on drinking, Johnny? This is a reflection on you.
Well, it's a reflection on Irish stags, to be fair. Have you been on a stag that didn't focus on drink?
We went into Paddy O'Shea's not long afterwards. And,
I'd love to do a stag in the Blaskets, because you can stay there, but limited capacity, so I'd have to limit it to 4 or 5 cottages. It's an amazing experience.
Beautiful. The whole Quinn experience and the ferry out and.
It's funny, like I was I think I was doing a slot for Off the Ball actually on a Friday in the car outside the Blasket Centre and in Queen, and I had to come out of the Blasket Centre and go back in, and when I went back in I was on my own, and I went into this room where there was kind of like it's just like a giant video of the Blaskets, and there was this song being played, being sung by this like haunting kind of Irish female vocalist, and I'd never heard the song before, and I was like, what is that song? And I still can't, every day I think of it over and over, and I texted my friend Leonard Barry, he'd be a piper, and he said I texted him like a kind of like a whistled version of it or something, because I could only remember bits of it, and I said, what is this song? And he said like I don't know the name of it, but Seamus Begley sings it. So I said I'll try and look that way. So I went into Nelligan's in Dingle that night, and who was there playing but Seamus Begley. So I asked him, Seamus, what's the name of the song? He said that's a beautiful song, like Brúach na Carrigabáine. So Brúach na Carrigabáine is the song that was just literally been in my head ever since. It's 2 songs from the Blaskets, like Brúach na Carrigabáine and Port na Buki, are just unbelievably stunning, just come from these little islands. And I don't know, when you go there, it's like it's just like humans are down the list of people who run the island. It's like the seals and the birds and the hares and the rabbits, and so I find it totally mesmerising, I have to say.
There's amazing isolation about it. Would you be now the man? Typically, would you see yourself living out there, like sort of? Like, it's all well and good, I suppose, when you're out there. We went out there. I've been out there twice now, staying out there, and the last time there was a bunch of us, and I guess no showers, no kind of running water, no real electricity. Could you? I spoke to the 2 people who'd Brock and Claire, who'd been the guardians of the island. Brock, I think, played ice hockey for Canada. I think, like, he was a really good sportsman, and they were there for 6 months and they loved it. But we were probably apt to say like winter would be very, very tough. Yeah. And our boat ride over is supposed to be like 15 minutes from Queen. But the weather was so bad we had to go from Dingle, and as we're on the boat ride over, they're like, we shouldn't be on this boat at all, and it should have been 40 minutes and took an hour and 40. It was really bad. So you can see the raw power of the water or whatever, but I'd tell anyone to go there, even stunning place.
And you just forget everything, like.
And as you say, from Dunqueen out, it begins that it's that famous photograph that people have seen a million times. You just don't know exactly where it is. That's where it is. That staircase leading down to the boat.
Yeah. That Slayhead Drive in general, Coomanole Beach and all. It's just like we have an amazing country. I think as the years go on, more and more people will want to live here as well, and we'll appreciate what we have. We often give out about the weather in Ireland and all that, but actually we're not too bad, and we have an amazing place.
And we're not doing too bad. He segues awkwardly into the football last night on the football front either. I mean, it just felt for large tracks with the Shamrock Rovers game last night in the Conference League, that, like, looking at it just felt. There's been obviously some criticism of Stephen Bradley. Sorry, I don't know, is it criticism exactly, but certainly comment that, at times that he hasn't gone for it maybe in a way that he might have done, and there was the context previously. I don't know, they'd been playing, they had big games in the League of Ireland. They might have had Shelbourne a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday after a Thursday game, and like keeping some of the powder dry because the focus is on the League of Ireland. And obviously that shackle has been released now, and they're over the line on that front. But still, obviously last night there was a rake of players missing.
And maybe they're still been minded. We have some of the brighter names, obviously, in terms of Jack Byrne and Graham Burke, and they lose a couple of players early in the game as well. Maybe all that didn't help. And for all that, they nearly got over the line. I've said this repeatedly after every game they've played, even the ones that have lost 3-0, that it looks like a good standard for them. Like they're well able to compete and win at that level.
Yeah, it's really, this group has been a bizarre group because, you know, Ghent are the top seeds, but they're not really playing like that, and they're obviously second last, and Djurgårdens, who Rovers beat, or rather got a draw against, have just sort of dominated the group and came from behind yesterday. Yeah, and I think 2-0 down against Molde. I could see Rovers actually like getting a result, potentially Djurgårdens, who will probably have their foot off the gas a little bit. But I thought last night was much more like it, and the contradiction of it all is that it was a dead rubber for Rovers, yet it was their best performance, really. I think Pico Lopez being back, I've said this, I just think if you look at his experience and the way he marshals the defence, and just like Pico Lopez was playing against Sadio Mane in the African Nations Cup and was not out of place for that first half anyway. I think he might have gone off injured that day, but he did really well, and I think he's been a big loss to Rovers, and he's come back now. And for the players that they were missing, my problem with Rovers in general in Europe is that they've a desperate lack of pace in their team. And Neil Farrugia came on last night. He was massively involved in the first goal. He just has that extra gear, and I think their recruitment wasn't good enough to fight the war on both fronts this year. But they won the league, which shouldn't be underestimated because Derry were making a battle of it. They won the league, and I think they'll have learned lots of lessons for next year. They need young players, they need faster players, and they need to be more competitive, because I think this group, it shouldn't have been impossible for them still to be in the running for second place at this stage.
There's nothing, the thing, like Djurgården have obviously pulled away, but there's nothing between the rest. Mathematically it was done even before last night. They weren't going to get out of the group, but like there's nothing between them, like in a way that I know that some of the results suggest, if you just look at the results you think well, they were well out of the running, but that's not the truth of it. I wonder about your point there about the depth of the squad, right? Like if Stephen Bradley has shown that when it comes to the heat of, so there was so much celebration obviously when they qualified into the group stages. Nationally everybody was like, Jesus, this is great, brilliant thing for Irish football, but his mindset was never to go after it, really. Like, you know, I
don't know, I mean, see that
from the team selections.
Well, yeah, that wasn't the sounding at the start, and then I'm not in training every day with Shamrock Rovers, and I don't know what he was seeing to suggest that he made what he would probably deem to be the practical call, in the sense that we really need to win the league here.
So what I'm saying is, does that change then, regardless of if he has a little bit more depth and maybe a few less injuries, probably was an aspect of it as well, does his mindset shift? Because he did make a comment at some point over the last couple of weeks about we would have been far better than we would have pulled away in the League of Ireland essentially if we hadn't had the distraction, and I'm including my own word there, but if we hadn't had the group stages, which suggests to me that if it rolls over again next year in the exact same way, that no matter what the depth, he might still go with the same methodology.
I think he look for better players, like say like the likes of Liam Burke now, who's linked with them. He did very well for Bows in Europe last year, as did others. Like a lot of it is literally speed, in my view. I think in Europe, if you have a static team, which Rovers, even if you look at Spurs, like I saw the last Spurs game I saw was in Old Trafford. Spurs are effectively a counter-attacking team, but they don't have very quick players on the break. So like if you're a counter-attacking team, and as in Europe, if you're under the cosh a lot, and let's be honest, Rovers even last night, they were lucky to get a draw, really. If you look at the chances that
they were hanging on,
they were hanging on because Fergie got sent off. But like I think he's a lovely player to have in these games, because he has that touch of technical quality. But you need like Aaron Green was leading the line in some of these games. Like Aaron Green has slowed down a bit because he's getting older. They didn't have pace in midfield. Farrugia didn't play as much as I would have liked, and again that might be to do with, he's had terrible injuries with his calf, I think, and I think it's his calf, so Bradley might be trying to manage him as well. But if they come out of the group, they've gotten 2 points, they scored a goal, and they were a nuisance for Ghent last night in that they hurt their that was a game that Ghent really wanted to win, and Rovers were competitive, and it was very good to watch. That was much more like it. It wasn't even about like getting to the next stage, it was about being competitive, and that's what disappointed me, where they kind of half threw in the towel in games and just looked a bit out of their depth, I thought, at times, which even even Dundalk, the Dundalk of the pandemic Europa League, I thought they were more competitive. But they have the... you go to Tala. I was in Tala the other night against Pats, and they absolutely steamrolled them after going 1-0 down. And the place, their crowds on Friday nights, I think, are averaging over 6,000. So it's become a real thing, and they're going to kick on and go forward. And I think maybe Stephen Bradley had to just prioritize. We have to win the league here for the money that's involved in potentially getting back to the group stages next year. And I guess when we do reflect, Adrian, the fact that last night was worth more to them than winning the league. That's
166k for a draw in Europe. That's nearly 4 million they've bagged.
Yeah,
from all
I'm sure their expenses are huge now in terms of chartering planes and all of that. I'm sure that they've put out a lot of money as well, but the prize money in the League of Ireland is still such an elephant in the room for other clubs. I'm a Galway United fan. We're desperately trying to get out of the first division, but our only way of making money is by selling a player, and Alex Murphy have sold this year, or getting into Europe, and I mean that's a long way off. So I don't know how they're going to solve that.
We'll talk about United in a bit. There's loads coming up in the show today. We're with you until 10 o'clock this morning, and we've a right line-up for you, and we're going to cover plenty across the course of it as well. Ronan O'Toole, he's the Tailteann Cup Footballer of the Year, and he's standing by to join us in studio in a few minutes, the Westmeath forward, so he'll be with us in a couple of moments' time. David Sneyd was at that game in Tala last night, so more reflections on that, and on Rover season generally, and on Stephen Bradley generally, and we'll touch on Man United as well, of course. With him, we're going to preview the final weekend of Women's National League action, and it's a 3-horse race as we head down the final straight, and we're going to be joined on the line this morning by two of the managers with an interest, including Wexford's Stephen Quinn and Tommy Hewitt from Athlone. So we'll be joined with the two lads a little bit later on to get stuck into exactly what's going to happen over the final weekend, or at least what they think or hope is going to happen. Alan Quinlan will be with us just before 9 this morning, and lots to talk to him about. Of course, the interprovincials again this weekend, Munster Ulster particularly one to keep an eye on, and events too with the contract offers from the IRFU in relation to the women's players this week. We'll get Quinny's thoughts on that. Ronan Mullen is going to preview. This one's really snuck up with Katie Taylor back in the ring this weekend in Wembley against Karen Carvajal of Argentina in defence of her titles, of course. So Ronan will bring us the preview of that at about 9:20, and then Zak Moradi, who was in studio with Nathan last night, talking about his new book. So that's coming your way at 9:30 this morning. It's nearly 7:45. It's Friday morning, and good morning to you. Gently ease your way into the last day of the week, and hopefully you've got good weekend plans, whatever it is you're up to.
If you were walking or cycling into
it's wild
work,
out there.
It's wild.
There's some floods out there as well, so go easy on the roads. Drop us a message though, whatever it is you are, wherever it is you're at this morning, whatever it is you're up to, drop us a message on whatever channel you're watching or listening to us on. And United obviously had a 3-0 win over Sheriff last night, and it was sort of like he puts Ronaldo in the team, which I have to say was a real show of lack of ego on Ten Hag's part, because it's been a very public falling out every time there's a press conference or post-match, no matter if he's involved or not. Ten Hag has been asked about Ronaldo, and it must be, I mean, incredibly tough position for him to be in a lot of ways. But I did feel that it was such a show of lack of ego on Ten Hag's part. They've apparently had this showdown talks during the week where, I'm sure that from Ten Hag's point of view, he's sitting Ronaldo down and saying, listen, pal, you're a big name, you're one of the greatest players of all time, you can't do that, it's the second time you've done it, if you do it again, you're out of here. I presume that's the context of the conversation, but to be able to have that chat, to be able to publicly put him back in the team, to get him back to some sort of a level where he's interested in playing, I mean, looking at him last night, there were times where you might question that, but he's sniffing in around the goal. He gets his goal last night, and I think the whole thing reflects really well on Ten Hag.
Yeah, I think he's been brilliant, and I have to say, no, I didn't really dive much into the Ronaldo thing coming here this morning, but I imagine there's an element of, I'm playing you against Sheriff as a sort of that's your level now as well.
A punishment,
yeah, it's like I'm playing you. Man United were 1-10 to win that game, so they were always going to win. They took their time to take the leads, but obviously it wasn't a dead rubber, but it was a game they were going to win. I don't see him playing much in the league at all. I think if you watch we might talk about the schedule and how difficult it is for teams to keep up this momentum and the energy that these games demand. But like Man United, say I watched them against Spurs, that was the last time I saw them. They were excellent. They're dependent on a real vibrant kind of attack with pace. Ronaldo is so far off that. I don't see him featuring at all in the league really henceforth. Like I think maybe he'll play them in the last Europa League game. I'm not sure who their last game is. They're obviously through, yeah, I'd say he's done in all. But Ten Hag is just making appearances in terms of playing him in this game, because you can't do what he did, and it's a situation he has to manage. But I'd say privately he's totally done.
Brian Kerr was talking about it on the TV last night, and it's just like it's that point about the conversation about Ronaldo coming up at every hand's turn. It's this stench that, like, Ten Hag, on your point, I'm sure he wants him out the gap, like, and by all accounts Ronaldo wants out. There was chat about Napoli, and now it seems like that's not happening. So I mean, there was this thing about him wanting Champions League football, but like he ain't getting it at Man United. So would you not just?
I'm not going to get it, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
His problem, I think, is realising his mortality here, and he's probably struggling with that.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. He always played with this like chip on his shoulder a little bit. Like, he was never the most joyous footballer necessarily around the pitch in a way that Messi would generally play with a bit of a sort of a smile on his face.
Ronaldinho and so on.
But geez, looking at him last night, he was just the joy of football seems to be gone from him entirely. I want to overstate the case, because there were obviously moments within that game, but like, even from his teammates' point of view, it seems like everybody around him is sort of walking on eggshells a little bit, and it's like, let's try and get the ball to Ronaldo, and if he's not happy because he's missed, then we're all upset. It does feel a bit like he is just this stench around the place from the manager and the teammates'
this season compared to Rashford trying to play around. I'm not entirely blaming Ronaldo. My big problem with Ronaldo last season was that if you on the face of it, he did a decent season. All of United's offensive players seemed to just like collectively bomb for whatever reason, and the stench was probably not just this season. I think there was probably a stench around him last season, for whatever reason. It looks a terrible signing really in hindsight. I do remember Joe Malloy called it at the time. It's like, this lad won't be able to press, it's not going to work, when I think most of us were saying, well, he will get goals and all that, and probably there's that element of nostalgia as well, which I'm definitely guilty of, and I think football fans are, where they're like, you want to go back to when football was pure, or at least there was in your head, and Ronaldo and Fergie were around, and it just didn't work.
No, it didn't, and
it's not going to work.
No, it doesn't appear so at this stage, and we'll see how it plays out over the last few weeks. I should mention as well, by the way, we had Latte Larry onto us a couple of weeks ago, last week, when Ireland was it last week when Ireland qualified for the World Cup? A week's a long time in sports broadcasting.
In the cricket?
Yeah.
That was last week.
Last Friday morning.
Beat the West Indies.
Yeah, it was. You're absolutely right, because we were in the studio. So, Larry and everybody else is interested in the cricket this morning. Ireland versus Afghanistan at the T20 World Cup in Melbourne, abandoned in the last hour. Just torrential rain. Johnny mentioned it's been pretty brutal here. You don't really expect it this time of the year in Australia, I must say, but
this hasn't like
called a draw, and we're going to march on now to Monday against Australia.
This stuff isn't like, people just aren't reporting this, but Australia is getting ridiculous weather patterns now, where you're getting like 40 degrees up the north and torrential rain, like biblical rain, where the Australian Army is basically saying our job now is just to deal with climate related issues. Like, so it's not surprising, but like, long may it continue for Ireland, obviously. Just get our games called off, and
we could end up winning the World Cup the way with this more rain. We could end up sort of winning this thing.
It's great crack beating England regardless. Anyway,
well, they would have had a really decent. It is disappointing, because they would have had a really decent shot at beating Afghanistan and put themselves in a really strong position to, would have taken potentially something. Like, it wasn't a gimme by any stretch. I think they played them during the year, and
they're closely matched.
Ended 3-2, whatever. So it would have been tight, but it would have put them in. If they could have had a shot at that, could have got over the line, they would have been just in a better position against Australia. So look, and there's a lot of navel gazing going on in England, English cricket as well at the minute, given obviously what happened as well there during the week. We did want to mention something else as well this morning. It's a topic we've touched on a lot over the last number of months. We'll touch on it again, I've no doubt, as well, over the next 3 weeks in the lead into the World Cup, and hopefully beyond that as well. But there were some events that caught our eye. We'd sort of tried to tee somebody up to come on and join us to talk about it, and it just for various reasons just didn't work. But we did want to make mention of them and not let the morning go by without it, in relation to Qatar and the World Cup. we wanted to make sure that there was an awareness around some of these things that have happened this week. That, you know, when you're watching the games in a few weeks, or you've seen Gary Neville's mini doc on Qatar and on the World Cup, and it's a lot of information to take in, and it's really hard to know which way is up. Like, you know, is it right to tune in? Is it right to enjoy the games? Is it right to point out Qatar's shortcomings when a lot of us globally, and including in this country, we don't have our own house in order? So is it right to do those things? Fair questions, but we just wanted to present a couple of facts from stuff that had happened and emerged from Qatar over the last week. The main one was in relation to Human Rights Watch, that accused Qatar of arbitrarily arresting and abusing LGBTQ plus people. It said that it identified 6 cases of severe and repeated beatings. Local reports are that those numbers, that 6, is indeed actually much higher. 5 cases of sexual harassment in police custody since 2019, between 2019 and this year. And Qatar's security forces have arrested people in public based on their gender expression and mandated transgender women to attend conversion therapy sessions as a condition of their release. So there are some things that we thought was worth bringing to your attention this morning, and worth pointing out that same-sex sexual conduct between men remains illegal in Qatar, not, however, between women. An official statement from Qatar saying they deny those accusations. They say they don't operate or they don't license conversion centres, saying that the clinic referenced treats people for behavioural conditions. Was emerged from Qatar during the week. Also had the British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly saying that gay fans going to Qatar should be respectful of local laws, show a little bit of flex and compromise.
Just be a bit less gay.
James Cleverly, as aptly named as Prosperous in Kildare, with fairly unusual comments. I mean,
not having a
slightly ironic.
Yeah.
The Australian national team, of course, is the last point to mention, backed by their FA, did one of the bravest things, I think. I don't know if it goes far enough, but it was certainly one of the bravest things that's been done so far, and they became the first team to publicly criticise Qatar's human rights record. They released a video referencing the treatment of migrant workers and the treatment of LGBTQ plus people this week. And a penny for the thoughts of Qatar's chief sports officer at its national academy this week, their former teammate Tim Cahill. A few things that have happened this week, and we just wanted to bring to your attention.
It will be just intriguing if this whole Qatar nonsense, like what happens when the World Cup starts, and will there be a bit like the the protests you get now from the Extinction Rebellion stuff? Will there be protests over there that are kind of going to attract attention and be something of what they might see as a sideshow, or will it become a problem for the authorities? Because we all know this should not be happening. This World Cup should not be in Qatar for a myriad of reasons.
I think that one of the biggest things, Johnny, will be when the World Cup is over. And I said this conversation shouldn't exist in isolation, because we need to be looking at our own sort of systems and structures and how fairly we treat people or otherwise.
Absolutely.
And we're not alone in that regard, and neither are Qatar. But now that the World Cup is there, it deserves conversation, and don't let anybody tell you it doesn't. But what I would say is that it's going to be as good as it gets now. It can't be. It's not going to get any better than this. Like, once the circus moves out of town in a couple of months' time, once the World Cup is done, what happens then?
It's not that long ago that we were basically a Catholic state as well, where the Catholic Church practically governed the norms in this country, and homosexuality wasn't legal until 35 years ago or something like that. So we can engage in whataboutery here, but what was the logic beyond money of bringing there's so many things wrong with it. And I find, forget about the obvious issues with human rights, which are the biggest issue. Look at the structure of the football calendar now, how they've had to have a World Cup this time of year. They're making demands of players that I think are utterly absurd. And the legacy of it, Adrian, what is the point putting a World Cup in a place that is full of, 3 million people, full of expats? There's not going to be any legacy from this World Cup we're talking about. If you want to bring the World Cup to the Middle East, I think that's a noble ambition, albeit it'd be hard to find any regime that you wouldn't find a major problem with. But Qatar, a tiny country that is going to rip up some of these stadia, there's going to be no legacy here whatsoever beyond the amount of people who died in 50-degree heat building the bloody things.
Yeah.
It's sick, and football, I personally, it's one World Cup I really have no interest in, and I mean that. And I know we'll say, we'll watch the games. I will not be watching. I'll watch some of it, but I've no real interest in that World Cup. And you got to realise football is football and there are other issues.
Yeah, and look at it, it's hard.
And we're not there.
I don't know
if Ireland were there, I'd probably be.
Well, that's the thing. You'd have much more of a conversation about it at that point. Right, it is 5 to 8. It's Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. JP Wright says Ronaldo has to accept that the body won't do what the brain wants anymore. And I'm not even sure about the last part of that, JP, I must admit. But thanks for the comment this morning. You are watching OTB AM. And we are with you with Gillette in association with Movember, effortless shave, magnificent mo, and you can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. And yeah, we've Ronan O'Toole standing by the way, and we're going to talk GA very shortly. But a reminder before all of that, Regatta Great Outdoors are launching their first new Freddie Flintoff collection this autumn. To celebrate, we have a €100 regatta voucher to give away every day. One lucky winner is going to get that souped up to €500. So to be in with a chance of winning, all you have to do is like and retweet our Regatta Great Outdoors social post. It's on Twitter today. It's on our main Twitter page at Off the Ball. Remember, shop the Freddie Flintoff collection in store at Regatta Great Outdoors or online at regatta.ie. And as I said, up next, it's the Tailteann Cup Player of the Year, Ronan O'Toole, live in studio. First of all, the lads in the news round last night speculating about just how many All-Stars David Clifford is going to hoover up.
David Clifford, age 23, has just won his 4th award. Now Spillane has 9, Pat Spillane has 9. So let's say at 23 Clifford's going to play for another, we say 12 years? You accept that? How many All-Stars will he win in 12 years? Injury
got
allowing.
4, I was definitely going to win another.
Let's say 9. 9 to 12?
7 I'm going to say.
Okay.
Get to 11.
11 All-Stars. 11 All-Stars is like the over-under line. And you wouldn't be
Quite
surprised
possibly.
if he...
Like, it is still, and I assume he's going to get the Footballer of the Year award tomorrow night because it's 2 Galway players up with him, and like Clifford was so.
Yeah.
His genius is such that he had an unbelievable All-Ireland final, and it's just sort of taken for granted. Like, there's never been a build-up about a player like David Clifford that was so understated ahead of the All-Ireland final that he'd never won an All-Ireland. Yet nobody's going, has to prove it on a big occasion.
No.
It's going to be a different challenge for him. It was just assumed that he would turn up. And he did.
Correctly, as it turned out, yeah. No, there was no box to be ticked. No, can he do it on the big occasion? And, well, Shane Walsh, I guess, it's a strange thing. So Clifford's going to be an icon, I suppose, of the game, ultimately. For Shane Walsh, you'd love to chat to him and get, like, a really honest, how are you feeling about it? Because if that game goes the other way, you get Footballer of the Year, you're a legend forever. It's like such a... It's maybe top 5 greatest All-Ireland performances of all time because they win. Whereas over time now, it will unfortunately be forgotten as good as it was. And there's a long winter to think about that, isn't there?
There is that awkwardness when I say Thomas Sullivan has to be in there. And you go, well, who are you taking out?
I didn't want to ask.
Yeah, that is the ultimate question. All right, that's the lads on the news round last night. It's almost 8 o'clock, and I'm delighted to say we're joined in studio by the Tailteann Cup Player of the Year, Westmeath's Ronan O'Toole. Ronan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a million for coming in.
No problem at all.
Congratulations.
My pleasure. Thank you.
What a year.
Suspiciously strong Westmeath team to the show all of a sudden.
Listen, maroon and white, Johnny. Can we say maroon and white across the board? Congrats. What a year. Topped off by the award, obviously, last Friday. How did you find out about it?
Yeah, it was gas one there. One of the lads from Sligo, he was fitting the Sligo lads in that got the award, and he said, did you get one? And I didn't know at all. And he said, check your email. That's what they found out. So I went scrolling down through the email. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, and hoping there was an email, and then found it obviously. And yeah,
the spam section probably is
spam
like, this isn't real.
Who's the first person you see the email? Who's the first person you tell?
Parents. Yeah, the joy in their face when you tell them is nice. It's for them, for the club obviously, and obviously you represent the county as well. But yeah, family first, as you suppose.
What did they say when you were like, I won this thing?
I don't know if I said it like that. I know my dad was always, he was asking me, is there an award, is there an All-Star for this? And I was kind of playing it off. I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
that's right. I'm not sure. I think somebody mentioned it at some point.
He kept asking, when is that? Yeah. My mum actually, she lucky enough got to go. She was in Mexico for 3 weeks, so she came off the flight from LA. She had a connecting flight, so luckily enough she made it straight from the airport to Crow Park for the award. So that was nice that she got to make it as well.
Is the team WhatsApp group, does it go from sort of like the Westmeath group, like tumbleweed, to suddenly is it lit up, or what happens?
Star group? No. We're all together in that. all the lads were sending messages congratulating us, so that was nice. You know, you're representing them as well. As I said, you know, without them, it's the old cliche, without them I wouldn't have been there. I was just lucky enough I got one in the end. Yeah.
There is something special about that team as well, like just the All-Stars and seeing going from scanning it from top to bottom and seeing the different county colours, like, and I don't know, it's obviously novel, but in your respect, but like there's a lot of tradition there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like it was nice that there was 6 Westmeath representing, and obviously Jack Cooney was there, and our S&C Joan Angle, who's done a lot for us over the years, he got to come as well on the night, so it was nice that we were all together there. You know, it was nearly like a Westmeath table at one stage.
Don't mingle with anybody else.
Yeah.
What did you talk to Jack after it was announced, or how did that work?
Yeah, he actually sent me the job. I missed a call off him, and he sent me the job application for what he was going to do, and I thought he was asking me, did I want this job? I was I'm pretty settled in my job, Jack. And then he called me and he announced it, and you know, it was nearly emotional enough. He's been a big father figure for me over the 4 years, so yeah, I was devastated, and I know his passion for Westmeath football. Like, if you have a chat with Jack Cooney, Westmeath is mentioned within about 30 seconds. So he's it. I know it was a tough decision for him, but you know, he'll do great in that role as well. He leaves no stone unturned in any role he takes, so I'm sure they've got a good one with Jack.
When you say father figure, what does that mean, like, in practical terms?
Just his man management skills, to me personally and to all the lads, were brilliant. He's kind of the arm around the shoulder when you need it, and then he's the kick up the backside as well, when he knows when you're not at it. So in that sense, he was brilliant. He was always there for a chat, and even I was chatting to him at the awards, he said his door is always open. Do you know? Shows the character kind of in the man.
That you mentioned, we had him on a few weeks ago and we were talking about his new role, and we were talking about obviously the year that's been and all that stuff, and he was talking about that Westmeath aspect of things, and it's not something you hear that often from the so-called weaker counties. There tends to be, I'm constantly on about the elitism in GAA, and you know, these are conversations that tend to happen around the Kerry and Donegal's, but it was really encouraging to hear him talk about, you know, we're Westmeath people and the importance of having Westmeath people in the backroom team, and the importance of leaving the Westmeath jersey in a better place. Is that?
Yeah, that was something that was evident, you know, even before games. We'd all have to put on the jersey together, and he'd say, like, you know, Westmeath people have come and gone, this is your time, this respect the jersey kind of thing. He had this little abbreviation or acronym that he used. It was called 4ARV, and he used to put it under each message. It was why do you play? So we had a team meeting at the start of the year, and it was why do you play? And the 3 words that came out of it was family, opportunity, and respect or recognition. And he would put that under every message he sent, and it was something that would get the brain reset before you go out to a big game and say, why do you play? Like, you know, it was.
Jeez, that's
it was a nice touch.
Was that did you do some work with David Sharkey? Is that right? Is that where that came from, or was that?
Yeah, no, I think that's all Jack.
Is it? Okay.
I'm not sure now. I'm not sure.
I don't want to be taking I
don't want to take any credit, but you'll have to ask Jack and Dave on that one. Who wants to claim that?
And so David Sharkey, some people are familiar with, he's done some work around theming. It's become a big buzzword around sports, and he's done work with Aaron McGarry and La Rochelle, and it's become a thing. And somebody mentioned to me during the week that he was in with you guys as well this year.
He was in with our guys, so the one he used with us was Katie Taylor. I know Jack was referencing it before, and he would before. It was the Taunton Cup, I think it started, and it was like our journey was similar to Katie Taylor's journey. You get knocked down and you have to come back up again, and that was kind of like us. When we lost to Kildare, I think we took the Tuesday night off after we lost that, and we all came in together as a group, and we were like, we're going to give this a good rattle. And that was kind of similar to the Katie Taylor story. When she lost one of her fights and she had to come back, and he would do various clips. The work he did was fantastic. So yeah, that was the team we kind of had as Westmeath was Katie Taylor.
What was was that the collective like panel asked you to the Tailteann Cup? Because like you know, I mentioned Zak Moradi. Like Zak Moradi's point in Croke Park, I think playing the Leitrim colours, playing hurling would mean a lot more to me than like someone from Kilkenny in some respects, where you want to see the so-called weaker counties progress. Like how did everyone take to the Tailteann Cup and the opportunities that, because you know there's a lot of scepticism as well.
Yeah, no, I suppose, and I just mentioned it there, like Jack gave us the Tuesday night off after we lost Kildare, just kind of reset the bodies, and we came in on Thursday and we had a group huddle, and he went through the reasons why winning this would be so good, and I think it's evident enough from the scenes of Mullingar.
Did you need convincing?
No, I didn't. Anyways, there was silverware on the line, 2 days in Croke Park on the line, and four matches. Like, as GA players, you want to play more games. Like, we played six championship games this year. That's the most. I think the max I played was maybe 4 in a season before that. COVID year 1, you know, lost Dublin, and then the other years were 2 or 3. So we played 6 this year, and you could see in our game, like we got progressively better as the games went on. There was better cohesion. Like, you know, you're training more with the forwards. Even like myself, Lorcan and Luke and John would be was the 4 main up there, and you could see our movement patterns. We were there was better cohesion with us. So yeah, that's why there was buy-in. You know, we wanted to play more games and grow as a team, and exposure to younger lads as well. You know, a lot of lads got their first outing in Croke Park this year, first championship game this year. Robbie Ford, Nigel Hart, Charlie Drum started against Carlow full back when Kevin Guire was out, did brilliantly. So like, those lads got a lot of experience in the year as well.
We won't know the value. Like, it's very obvious to say that like the value of that should be that the gap starts to close between Westmeath and, let's say, in terms of Leinster. There was only 3 points in it in Kildare match, but in reality it felt like it might have been a little bit more. What's your sense of, because I was interested when Jack was on with us before, he talked about like Leinster being realistic or an openly spoken about ambition for the team, and I was a bit struck by it, I have to say, because I didn't because Dublin are here and then everybody else is sort of down here a little bit, certainly in terms of Leinster. Do you think a run like that can help close that gap to Dublin, and is Leinster a realistic ambition for you next year?
To be honest, Leinster was never really talked about prior to last year as an ambition to win it. We took it game by game, but before this year we wanted to give it a good crack. Now we fell short of that. But yeah, hopefully the bit of experience from last year will help close that gap. I suppose you have to be ambitious as an athlete to hopefully want to lift that Delaney Cup. But we'll see what the next few seasons bring.
And the Kildare game was interesting to hear you talk about that, like, because was it 3 points in it in the end?
Yeah.
Was it like, so we in the dressing room afterwards, it was like, I presume you were pretty devastated about the whole thing. It takes a while before you start to get your head around, well, there's something else to play for here almost.
Yeah, I was just devastated about the performance. To be honest, we probably let in a cheap enough goal at the start. Like, I think we were 1-2 up to maybe 1 or 2 points.
10 seconds in, you're like, this is going well here.
Yeah, luckily enough.
Was that a training ground move, or was that no?
Where was the Kildare defence? I'm wondering.
I don't know. Wally just saw a gap and
they're dealing with a future all-star here, like, you know.
Yeah, he took flight, but yeah, no, I was just
and you go ahead too early in him, like, you know, you look at Pats went. I was telling Pats against Rovers. Pats went ahead after 4 minutes the other night, and they were battered afterwards. Like, and is it possible to? I know it's a cliche, but like, did you get a false sense of, oh my God, what's happening here?
I don't think so in that game, but I agree with your point in that it can happen in games when you get a lead. You can tend to sit off, hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and you might regret that.
So when you come in after the Kildare game, then do you start out in the whole like process, so to speak, because you're just saying that wasn't our performance? Like, why?
Yeah, I was devastated after the Kildare game. I needed that Tuesday off just to get the head right, because we gave so much with it. I was actually just coming back from injury, so I would have been kind of half injured playing the Longford game, so I was feeling fresh enough after that. So that's why it was devastating for me, because I was just back fit. I would have played injured nearly. I didn't really train during the league. I just played games, and then we played our last game in Belfast in Antrim, and then I would have went to Cap Hospital and got a cortisone injection. I had a bit of osteitis pubis in my groin, so I needed a rest on that. So it was frustrating in the sense that I was just back feeling great, and then boom, you're sank back down.
What age are you?
At 25, you had to think about that.
And it feels like you've never been, the run of games helps, but that your progression has been steady building and like to become a point where you're obviously picking up this award and been one of the most important players in that team now.
Yeah, I suppose I think I'm coming into my 6th year now. So yeah, I like Lomans was a big help for me as well. Having a great club team there. I would have went in. My first year in Lomans, we won the championship, and then we did 3 in a row. Like I remember going in the Monday, into the Monday club and saying, "This is great. Like this is easy, 3 in a row." But then
it's happened every year.
Yeah, we found out it doesn't happen every year. But yeah, the club was a big one for me. How they progressed me in a way, and how they took me under the wing, a lot of the older lads. And then even in Westmeath, like there's a lot of lads there that would be giving you a few nuggets there. Jerry Egan as well, and obviously John in the club.
What's it like training with him week in, week out? He's like, he doesn't get spoken about often enough, but he's Michael Murphy-esque, I think, in his style of play, and certainly his influence on that team.
Yeah, he's great. There's a bit of wrestling now, I'd say, with the fullback. I'd say the fullbacks don't like him.
Right.
Yeah. When he doesn't get the ball, I think they know about it rather than the forwards. But no, he's great. Yeah, he's great. Teammate and captain for Lomans as well. Huge servant over the years. I think this is like his 13th season or something with Westmeath, which is crazy. So yeah, he's been a huge servant.
Funny you say when you missed the start. You missed much the league in terms of training. Like, do you think that the counties get it right in terms of the amount of training that club and county players do, or could less be more?
It was probably my fault in a sense. I didn't tell the management I always want to play out there. Like, I was training through an eagle, and it got progressively worse. But I think it was the 9th of December, we lost Port Harrington. I had 1 or 2 weeks break and it was straight back into county, and probably a bit of rest would have been no harm, but I would take that onus on me to say that rather than management knowing how I am. I always like training, but when you're carrying an eagle, you probably shouldn't be.
What you mentioned about some of the players giving you a few hints and tips and stuff. How much work do you do with Desi on the art of being a forward?
Yeah, so there's a split there. John Keane would take the backs and Desi would take the forwards, so there's always a bit of competition there. But no, Desi's great. Like, he came in this year and like instantly everyone know, and I'd say I'm speaking on behalf of all the team there, like we just sat back and we're just like, wow, right, really, this lad knows his stuff.
In terms of his
just the way he was talking in games and doing the right things, keeping it. I remember he said something, just do the basics right and the rest will come, like, and that's something I always kind of take into big games now. If you're ever nervous, kind of just do the basics right, good start, and then the rest will come after that, kind of.
Would you be nervous?
No, I'm not. I'm all right for that. Yeah. Listen to a few tunes on the way up. I'm the DJ, as you call it, in the dressing room. So
here we go.
No, yeah. So no, a bit of music. No, I'm not too bad for nerves, thankfully enough. Just kind of just keep the same routine. So.
Is he working with you on the specific detail of stuff, like where you're one-on-one and you're probably teaching him a thing or two about the sidestep? But outside of that, is he working on the specific detail of, like, how detailed?
I think he works more on groups. Right. Obviously, if you have any questions, he's open always. But as a forward unit, I think more so. And like this year, I think was the most evident of that. Where I used to be kind of more so outer 11, would do most of my work in the middle third, where I found myself and John maybe switching between 11 and 14 more so this year, and even Luke as well. Like Luke can play in 11, and then you've always Lorcan with the depth in there. So I think as a unit he brought more structure to us, especially from a forwards perspective, knowing where to be at the right times. That was something I definitely took. It was a great takeaway this year anyways.
Yeah, we'll see how he goes in the main job obviously now over the next few years as well.
We will indeed.
Look forward to watching on. Pleasure chatting to you over the last 20 minutes. Thanks a million for coming in.
Thank you, no problem. Thanks, lads.
Talented Cup Player of the Year, Ronan O'Toole from Westmeath. It's 8:15. You're watching OTB AM. Delighted to have you with us. We've lots to come. We're going to talk football next at the football writer David Sneyd in studio.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Zebo going on his own. He gets a try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Carver gets over the line. Try from Munster.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
The Irish Centre for Diversity is proud to launch the inaugural National Diversity and Inclusion Awards. Taking place in Croke Park on Thursday, February 2nd, the NDI Awards celebrate individuals and organisations that go above and beyond in their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Free entries close this Friday and nominations are open across 10 categories, including race and ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ+, and disability. Visit ndiawards.ie for more. And remember, closing date for entries is this Friday.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
16 minutes past 8. You are watching OTB AM. That wasn't close one, wasn't it? No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
What did he?
We don't need. We can move on from that one. David Sneyd, football writer of the 42. Good morning to you.
Good morning, lads.
What's your actual title?
I'm very well. Pardon?
What's your actual title?
I don't know. Employed.
Yeah, that in journalism.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Was last night? You were out there last night, were you?
No, I wasn't. I was doing something else. I was actually working on a feature. Believe it or not.
That's his new job.
Something different.
Watch the space.
Yeah, but no, I watched the match. Yeah.
Was last night evidence that Rovers should have gone for it a bit more? And I know obviously some of the bigger names weren't there, and it's the constant after every game we find ourselves talking about it. But like last night, they bank more money than they win for winning the League of Ireland season. The League of Ireland's wrapped up, and I know there was a couple of injuries and stuff like that, but like, was last night, that's great, and they got the job done, and again they showed they were at that level, or was it like, could we just have done this a little bit more during the stages?
I think there's an element of both aspects of that. My own reading of it, just from speaking to people at Rovers, and then even just listening to Stephen Bradley this week after obviously they won the league. Look, we were out in our Roadstone the day after they won it, and he made the point that he was like, this is something playing in Europe that the club shouldn't have to wait another 10-11 years for. And then that kind of tallies in from what you're hearing from you speak to people, because it is very much a case of Rovers putting plans in place here. Like, it's not a case of, right, they qualify for Europe, they have to go hell for leather and lash into it because they're never going to be here again, and you never know when it's going to happen again. There's very much a sense that this is something that's part of, and it's a word that was mocked when Bradley first came in, but the process, like, this is what they're building towards to be on a regular basis. So while I would say the one game would be moulded away when I thought, you know what, that's when he actually threw the towel in a little bit and I accepted, you know what, the league was more important. And
that was the term I used.
Shelburne on the Sunday, was that the week?
Like, which they won with the last minute winner.
Yeah, and like, to be honest, like, fans I'd say would be looking at that thinking, you know what, there should have been maybe a stronger team out there, but it ties in with where Rovers are trying to go at the moment, whereby it's like, this isn't going to be the only time we're going to be here. Like, their thinking and their thought process is, by winning the league and the Champions path and the way that helps in terms of the season and all the rest of it, that they'll be in the Conference League again next year. They're not going to be banking on that, obviously, but that's what they're aiming towards, that's what they're building towards. And it's that kind of thought process of, do you know what, yeah, we've qualified, that's great, but this is still part of the early stages of what our plan is, the medium to long term plan of continued European football.
So to project forward into that, because there was a quote from during the week where he said, if you take the groups, this was in the context of the League of Ireland, if you take the group stages out of it, the Conference League were hard to beat. I took that as if they get back into it again next year, they may end up just doing the same thing again.
Well, I don't know. I don't think they should if they do, because the money that they've made this year, and even when you tie into, say, money that would have come in, say, from Gavin Bazunu sale, the add-ons and the money that will come in there, like, I think there's a couple of million coming their way from that as well. Like Andy Lyons leaving, going to Blackpool, there's a few more quid coming in there as well. Then you've got the natural investment that's already in the club. Obviously with Dermot Desmond and how they've kind of set up is there as well.
And 6,000 odd a week every Friday night.
And that's it as well. Like, you see what the average crowd is, and like they have to, not an element of massive rebuilding, but they do have to add in a couple of bodies in terms of freshening up the squad, and that's going to be needed. They've already worked on that. I think there's a couple, maybe 3 already down the line that will be pretty much sorted relatively soon, you would imagine. But again, it just comes into that, it seems to be coming into that point where, and it's kind of hard, I don't mean this in a bad way, but like, Rovers are just acting like a proper professional club in terms of actual forward planning. That, yeah, they have a bit of success, and it's not, right, what do we do here now? How do we keep this going? Like, what they're doing now is, it's within the framework and within the plan that they've put in place, you know. And like Johnny, you were saying there about the 6,000, like, it's, every other League of Ireland fan would probably not like the fact that Rovers are doing this, but what Rovers are doing between connecting with a fan base and everything with the youth structures and with how they now do actually focus on that first team, it's the perfect model. It really is. And when you tie in that they've got a manager who's not even 40, he's 37 years old, and he's already won three league titles in a row, already has European experience, and like, attracting interest, and listen, that's the only element of this, I suppose, that could maybe throw things off course with Rovers, is obviously when other people come in. But
we're hard on ourselves as well in the League of Ireland, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're sometimes we're too hard on ourselves in the sense that, like, the economic suicide and basket case reality of the League of Ireland is gone. Like, and this is a league where there's no prize money, and you know, we get kind of miffed by comments about, like, from England, about how we are relative to England. England is full of clubs who are run as economic basket cases, right, or losing so much money, going out of business. The League of Ireland in general is in a good place, and Rovers are an example of that. And you have, like, if you've Dermot Desmond investing in something, let's be honest here, he sees something that's worth investing in. You have, like, and even if when you have billionaire owners, like, there are 3 billionaire, if not 4 billionaire owners in the league now, those clubs, being Derry City and Galway United, are still being run prudently. And even Galway United this season, our average crowd is going to be over 2,000 a week in the first division, and these clubs are being run, like, sensibly, despite the fact that we've no prize money coming from above.
And like, you say that about being hard on ourselves, and you kind of get the sense, like, if you think of Stephen Bradley, I'm just mentioning this, I genuinely think that his kind of story is one of the great Irish football stories at the moment, in terms of, like, I remember doing a feature with him for 442 with him and Stephen McPhail a few years ago, and he told the story when he was coming through, and like, he's spoken with this before, how he was, like, lauded as a young player, everyone wanted him, but like Alex Ferguson coming to his house in Tallaght and arriving, and he's out, like, he's late coming in because he's playing football on the street with his mates, whatever, and he goes for dinner in town with Alex Ferguson, and then he comes back and eventually he signs for Arsenal, and he's spoken about obviously the attack and everything that happened, but how he was able to rebuild his life after that, when you think about how it could have easily gone a completely different way.
What if Rovers sacked him?
But that's the other element to it. Like, he comes back, and he comes back and plays in the league and all, and then, like, he retires early. He didn't have to. He retired because he just had fallen out with love of playing football. Really, he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do, and then just that. Like, he took over as a caretaker over his 31 years of age, when Rovers were a bit of a basket case. They really were. Like, they were short. It was short term. They were sacking managers. Like, there didn't seem to be any kind of full on plan. And he helped drive it at that age, and has now started delivering success. And like, I genuinely think he just deserves a tremendous amount of respect for what he has done in that. And then when you throw in this year, the emotion behind everything, and he's spoken about his son and how he'd been diagnosed with leukemia, and like, he was out talking about that to us on Tuesday, and like, literally I was sitting beside him, like, tears in my eyes listening to him, because like, you're thinking about what he's gone through and how he's describing stuff, and it's hard to genuinely hard to comprehend how he's got through this year. I have no idea how. Well, I have. It's because of his family, and it's because of the staff he was talking about,
and the players as well. Like, I think the players really, like, they were men, and like, they were good people. They were like, we're going to do this for him, and we're going to rally around him. And like, I think I have to laud the Rovers board when they lost 5-2 against Dundalk. If you canvassed 1,000 people across Ireland, they're like, Bradley should go, it's not working out.
But they had the banner, didn't they? Remember, they had the banner at Tallaght, remember being at that match?
The banner, it's time is up, whatever. They stuck with him, and I think he was a young manager, he was with young coaching staff, and from my experience of having dealt with them, I think they've learnt on the job as well, as you would expect. And Rovers, I think Rovers, like, they lost their riches from 2011. They basically squandered that, and they realise now that we're going to do this a little bit longer term. And they had Stephen Kenny, they had Pat Fenlon in, they had Trevor Crawley in.
Brian Laws.
Yeah, Brian Laws. And I was like, we need to give this man time. And I'm glad they did, because this was a story that never happened. All these titles, could be 4 in a row, would never happened if they sacked him. And most people probably would have said they should have. They stuck with him.
You talk about the players, like, I just thought was the way he was describing it, the image of if Pico Lopez gave Josh Stephen Bradley's son his jersey after one of the games, and when because he went to Talca Park during the match during the week just because he didn't want to know what was going on between Derry and Sligo. But then, like, Josh is wearing, and he realised he's wearing a Pico Lopez's jersey, and he says there's like a night dress on him, and he's sleeping on it and sleeping in it. And that just kind of sums up the kind of sense that's actually at that club at the moment, you know.
There's a lovely story
line as well,
that story that you wrote during the week with him from that piece, and it really encompasses everything you're talking about how he was at Talca Park and his wife rings him to give him the news, and how outspoken he's been with the playing group of about Josh and about the condition, and that in itself was, it made me stop a second and go, wow, I was surprised that he would be as placed the story as central to what was going on as he has done.
I suppose when you think about it, like, it just kind of plays into how his life has been in terms of some of the stuff that's happened to him, and by speaking about stuff that's obviously clearly worked for him, you know. And just that modern day, the modern day manager or coach where you connect with your players on 2 levels. Remember the whole thing of you don't want to get too close to your players, you don't want to be seen as their best mate, and obviously he's not all their best mate because he has to make tough decisions, but the fact he's able to keep that group of players seemingly very content with the amount of rotation that happens, it just shows you that they're not doing it just because there's success there. Like, it's clearly because they actually buy into what he's doing and they respect him as a person, and that just seems to be one of the core kind of pillars of how he goes about things, is that it's not right, if you have a problem you box it off, just concentrate on football. Maybe that could have been there in early stages, and as Johnny was saying, you learn the job and you realise how players tick really. But it just seems to be that openness is what's driving it really.
He was confident enough to start the season. I said, how are you keeping all these lads happy? Like, and he said, it's not my job to keep them happy. And I was like, yeah, you're actually right here, but they have to want to play for you.
Well, that's it.
But like, it's not my role is not keeping players happy. My role is to get things for Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah,
and whatever way he's managed it,
maybe keeping them happy is not exactly representing what's going on, but the point is
wanting
that, like,
to play.
Sometimes they can obviously, the unhappiness can lead to
not losing the dressing room and all that. And like, Rovers have complex individuals in that dressing room, like any other dressing room, maybe more than other dressing rooms. And somehow, if they're not happy, they've won the league again in a canter, and they've done it. Like, and you know, the players that, who else are they going to bring in, and where are they going to go? And because they will raise their standards next season again, I think.
Oh, they will. It's natural, and I thought it was telling though when Stephen Bradley was asked about has everything that's happened this year with his family and all the rest, maybe said if something was to come up abroad, be it England or elsewhere, would that basically rule you out of him? He said, no, listen, if something comes up, you obviously have to kind of look at it and kind of and see where you stand with it. But like, that would be the big thing. And in terms of, and you would imagine Rovers, let's be honest, like, they would have had that sense where, because obviously Dermot Desmond got involved in that during the summer when Lincoln were coming in for Stephen Bradley, and helped just kind of ease the situation a little bit, and that kind of convinced them to stay. But you would think that's kind of giving them that little bit of a jolt to say, well, hold on, you need to have some kind of succession plan in place here in terms of having some people to come in, because it is very much a case that it's a kind of collaborative effort at Rovers as well. Obviously Bradley is the main man, but you've got Stephen McPhail there, who's the technical director, but he's on the bench for every game as well. It's not as if he's just maybe the boards man and is like separate to things. He will be very much intricate to how
massively important.
Yeah, and obviously Glenn Cronin as well. So it's that element. That's the element. Like any club that's successful, especially at the level where Rovers are at, where within the League of Ireland they're the main team at the moment, but in the food chain, the greater scheme of things, it would take a club to come in and get him, and it could have done. It's not as if this is the job of a lifetime where you can never turn it down, you know what I mean?
Final thing on that is I think the 6,000 odd that Rovers are getting on Friday night, I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that it's very good football to watch. Like, it's actually entertaining, it's a nice stadium, it's good football to watch. And League of Ireland managers aren't going to England anymore. League of Ireland managers have to pit themselves against Stephen Bradley, Stephen O'Donnell, Damien Duff, Rory Higgins, Tim Clancy, John Russell, and all these other managers. And it's a league that has its own like micro kind of quality about it now, where this is our league and we have to better each other, and we're not really worried about England as much anymore. And I hope that's a good thing.
It's mad as well. Colin Healy be coming up as a manager with Cork, and he's one of the older lads now. He's 42.
He has to sign a new contract. Like, so next season is going to be class. Like, it's going to be practically full time, and some of the personalities involved.
Stephen Kenny was in the stands last night. Who was he? And he had a little notepad out. Who was he checking it?
Well, he's been on record, and he kind of it's always interesting with Stephen Kenny, I think, because you kind of know where his thinking is at, because he'll throw names at you when like you wouldn't have even expected them, or you haven't kind of maybe led him down a certain path or tried to say, well, get your thoughts on a certain player. But Neil Ferrugia is the one he keeps on going back to, and you got glimpses of it last night where just that powerful running. Probably the one thing that Rovers do lack at that level you were saying at the start, Adrian, about they've shown that they're well capable, and they have been. It's just been maybe just that little bit of pace, a little bit of power that they're just lacking maybe at that level, to kind of in the final tours especially, to actually kind of cut through teams. And Ferrugia is the one, I think,
I'm delighted for him, because I genuinely
the injuries he's had
his
as well.
career was done. I actually did.
And he qualifies for Malta as well,
and France
and France. Well, I think he has a better chance to play for Malta.
He's
better chance to play for Malta.
There's nothing that
and he got like 600 in the leaving as well.
Nothing that excites us more than he could be going somewhere else. Let's lock him down. We've great track record, of course.
I'd be a bit of a hypocrite now if he plays a couple of times for Malta and then declares for Ireland. But but I think he will be the one in terms of, and even that position, because he can play. You could play as that kind of maybe like left wing back. And the reason why I say Ferrugia, and I'm more so because I actually asked Kenny this about Andy Lyons around the time he was going to Blackpool, because Andy Lyons obviously had a great kind of season with Rovers, and he actually said no, Ferrugia is the one. So he'd be one, I would say, that if especially with the friendlies coming up, maybe he could be in with a shout if he can stay fit, hopefully.
Left wing back is still kind of up for grabs.
Ronaldo's back. He's fully into the team ethic. Everything is turning up Millhouse. Is that right?
I know. Well, the fans were singing Viva Ronaldo last night, weren't they?
What's this celebration all about?
I don't know. Is he kind of sleeping? He did it against Everton, didn't he? So is he kind of just that? Is he at peace at where his
Sue is gone? He's at peace. Is that it?
I don't think he's at peace at where his career is at. What it was the last week or so, it wouldn't have happened. But it's just pantomime stuff, really, isn't it? It's
they feel like they're getting fixed, though.
Yeah, no, but actually, and in fairness, I was actually doing a piece at the weekend for the 42 on this, because I just thought, remember when Keane was talking about this on Sunday with Sky, and it felt as if the world was falling in. He was like, it was as if, you know what, he just has to go now. When he said it against City, that this is going to be a problem, and clearly it has been, but it felt as if he's never going to play for United again. This is an outrage. Gary Neville is in, throwing his usual stuff in, and then but by the Monday he's back training. Like he's all smiles at Ten Hag, training with the open training session before, then he starts and he scores. So in less than a week, Ten Hag has managed to actually just totally squash this.
Masterstroke.
Genuinely, I think. And listen, you're not in the dressing room. You don't know what even Ten Hag's thinking is, and some of the stuff that's being said.
Isn't he?
Ronaldo's
done. Like, I mean, he's playing against Sheriff, so he's like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, you would imagine so. Like, he wanted to leave during the summer. The United were happy for him to go, and the offers didn't come. Like, you know, and like the fact that the offers didn't come and they weren't able to get rid of him in good time to actually try and find any kind of replacement. Ten Hag has just shown what most top managers would be, where you have that sense of this is what you want to do, but then an element of pragmatism has to come into it, where how you deal with the situation. That's what he's been doing, and I just thought it was gas when Keane threw Paul Scholes under the bus when he brought up about
quietly going about his day, and suddenly
but then the reason why, and there's this book, have you read the new book about the 99 treble season that Matt Dickinson has done? And I just thought it was good timing, because Paul Fennessy with the 42 had done an interview with Dickinson about it, and he was saying how for Keane, like this whole thing of, you know, the great team spirit, it's not as if we're all like a brotherhood here where it's just about what you want to win on the pitch. And that, like when he threw Scholes under the bus. But then I went back to that time, and you go through what was happening at United when Ferguson had kind of said he was floating, he was going to leave, and United had won 3 league titles in a row, but then absolutely capitulated the next season and were an absolute nightmare of a club. They were all over the place, you know, with the sign Varane and Van Nistelrooy and stuff. And you see what Keane is saying around that time, and then what you're saying about Ronaldo now, when you're like, is this the same person?
It's totally. And look, we're
great Teddy, like,
well, and we're also all contradictions at some point or another. And if you're on the TV all the time saying stuff, I'd hate to be rewinding this show from
especially Johnny. Could you imagine? Johnny's best bits on here would be amazing.
On that note, Cosmo Kramer on YouTube says we need a weekly Ward and Sneyd chatting League of Ireland segment, so I'm on for it. Thanks a million for coming in.
No bother, pleasure to be here.
David Sneyd, and that's a really good read, by the way. If you're looking for something that sums up Shamrock Rovers season, check out David's writing on Stephen Bradley from during the week on the 42.ie. It is 8:34. You're watching OTB AM, and I want to remind you that Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB, and each week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Applegreen store near you. You can just check out our Twitter feed at Off The Ball, like and retweet our Braeburn competition post there, and you're going to be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee never compromises on quality or taste to give you the best on-the-go coffee experience on the road, and it's available at Applegreen today. And a reminder too that the Creaslock Community Support Fund has been established by the Irish Red Cross. It's in collaboration with An Post and Applegreen to provide rapid and long-term assistance to the Creaslock community, and all donations to that fund will be dedicated to support those who've been bereaved and injured, made homeless or left without an income as a result of the tragedy there in the last few weeks. So in the days and weeks ahead, the Irish Red Cross are going to work with the community of Creaslock to ensure that all those contributions are going to be used as effectively as needed and assisting those affected by the incident. And you can donate now to the Creaslock Community Support Fund. Up next at 8:35, we're going to be joined by the Athlone Town manager Tommy Hewitt and Wexford Youths manager Stephen Quinn as we continue the build up to the final round of the Women's National League this weekend. But right now, Peamount star Karen Duggan on last night's Off The Ball explaining that she would love a cameo with Ireland at next year's World Cup, wouldn't we all?
Before you go, I don't want to split up the dream team, the Koi Gig dream team, but Vera Powell's obviously been talking, she's getting a lot of calls. Unsurprisingly, over the last few weeks, people with Irish passports who are suddenly discovering they have an Irish granny. What about retired stars who are thinking, you know what, maybe now's the time to come back?
Oh, I think my internet connection's about to drop. Look, I'll be in Australia. Put it that way. It'll probably be no, it'll definitely be as a supporter.
You said probably.
No, it'll definitely be. That was a slip of the tongue. I'll be there as a supporter. I'm the same. I was the same as everyone when they qualified. I was so excited to go training the next day after. It just kind of, I don't know, it just brought about something in everyone that they wanted to just get out and enjoy football, because it was just such a phenomenal moment, them qualifying. And of course it's everyone's dream to play in a World Cup, but there's, like I said, a lot of young talent coming through that definitely needs to be looked at. But yeah, we won't be splitting up the Koi Gig dream team anytime soon.
Availability is the best ability, isn't it? And listen, if you're down there a couple of weeks in advance, there's a late injury, you don't want all expense of bringing somebody out.
Yeah, look, I'll be over there is all I'm saying. I will be over there. I'll pack my shin guards just in case.
Good stuff. Karen Duggan on with Nathan last night. It is 8:36. You're watching OTB AM, and we've loads still to come. Alan Quinlan is going to be on with us in a little bit, and we'll talk about the weekend's rugby, get his thoughts as well on those developments with the IRFU and the women's team in relation to the contracts. But before all of that, it's the final weekend of Women's National League action. It's a 3-horse race heading into the weekend. Shells on top, 57 points, ahead of their trip to Wexford, who are on 56 points, and then Athlone hoping for a draw there, and they are on 55 points. So delighted to say we're joined on the line by the Wexford manager Stephen Quinn ahead of their trip to their game against Shells, and the Athlone manager Tommy Hewitt ahead of their trip to Bowes. Morning, lads.
Morning, Adrian.
I hope I've captured that as succinctly as I possibly could. Short story, Stephen, for you to begin with. It's in your hands.
Yeah, look, it's, if you told us at the start of the season what way the season would pan out with different things, that you had more as kind of a cup final in Ferry Carrick on the last day of the season, you were took that. So that's what we have now at the moment. We have to go win the game, so that's where our preparations have been, and we're looking forward to Saturday. You've been very close obviously over the last few years, but I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you've had it in your hands going into the last round of games. No, like you even look back to last year, we actually, it's the same thing really. We played Shell's last game of the season and we had them in the cup final the week after, but we were knocked out probably 2 weeks before that. We lost to Galway, so it didn't really mean anything. It was 3-2 on the night. Shells went 3-0 up, and we kind of fought back a little bit just out of, I suppose, pride. But it was not. You had that feeling going to Tulka that the season was over. We're just kind of looking after for work for the cup final, and now looking, and Athlone beat us in a cup semi-final, so you don't have that cushion to fall back on now. So it's all or nothing on Saturday, and the league is massive for us, and a lot of girls have won this league and know that it brings Champions League football. So there's a lot of girls looking forward to this match, and it's going to be a really good game between two good teams.
Are you actually privately happy, Stephen, that a draw won't necessarily do, where it's like, no, just win the game?
Yeah, sometimes that can be, you can have that in the back of your mind, and even I suppose last weekend as well, like if you come into the last 2 games we needed 4 points, so we got a point last week against Peas, like, and when the game comes to the end and it's 3-3 and there's a couple of minutes left and you're thinking, do you go and push on to win it or do you just not lose it? So that is in your mind, but now that's gone out of your mind now going for Saturday when you know just 3 points is, so you're going to have to go after them, you're going to have to go and score goals, and you're going to have to try and be better in both boxes defensively and attack than Shells, which is no mean task.
Have you been driving that home this week about the nature of it being in your hands and the nature of needing the win?
Yeah, look, and I'm relatively new into the management. I suppose took over last year halfway through, and I've worked with Tom closely over the last 3 years, and it's a different kind of feeling going into the cup final. Is great, you know, that's there at the end of the season, like, but the league is a fair slog. It's 27 games and we've ups, we've downs, we've players that are injured. Now we've 2 players, like LOI got injured probably 3-4 weeks ago, and we've Della Doherty that dislocated her knee on Saturday, so both of them are out this weekend, and it's just kind of like that kind of season where there's been ups and downs, and it's every team have it, like, so it's going to be tough. We're under no illusions, but everyone's really, really excited, and training this week was good apart from the monsoon on Tuesday night. We had a good training session last night. We're all ready to go for Saturday.
Yeah, well, Tommy on the other line is hoping that the two of you play out a neat draw and opens the door for him. Momentum, Tommy, is, I mean, very much, it's a big thing in sport and very much in your favour at the minute, because you've beaten Galway, Treaty United, Wexford, Shells the last 4 weeks running.
Yeah, look, it's a game that all we can do is concentrate and try and win our own game, and what'll be will be down in Wexford, and you know, 2 superb teams going at it down there, and I'm predicting there will be a winner. So look, we, as Stephen said, alluded to there, we have the added bonus of a cup final to look forward to the week after, and for even Athlone to be in this at this stage of the season is phenomenal from our point of view. But you know, to be up there with the likes of Wexford and Shelbourne coming into this stage of the season is just fantastic for us.
Will you talk to us a little bit about that, Tommy? Because like I have watched some games in TG Carr over the last few weeks. One of them was the 2-0 win, Athlon's 2-0 win over Shells a few weeks back, and like playing some really good football, doing it, looked really comfortable in that company for a team that didn't exist a few years ago, for a team that were 50 points off Shells last year. How's it all come together so quickly?
Yeah, I think a small bit of continuity and consistency within the group. And you know, I said to myself last year after going to the places like Wexford and losing 7-1, and you know, did we want to be going around this season looking to, you know, to pick up them type of results? No, we didn't. So we got together as a group, we set goals and targets, and we've achieved most of them so far. And you know, the girls have been fantastic, and you know, we're a young side, and we look at Wexford the last number of years. You know, I remember Kylie Murphy doing an interview saying that when they came into the league, they took some hammerings too, and look where they are now. And we aspire to be like a team like Wexford and, you know, Shelbourne, and the girls are just, they're solely driven, and you know, they want to achieve at this level, and no bigger stage in the next 2 weeks.
It must feel, Tommy, like, I know your own playing career obviously didn't materialise to the extent it might have because of injury and all that, and you've seen the highs and lows of the League of Ireland, but this must feel like, in terms of the women's game in Ireland, you're somewhere at the start of a revolution here collectively.
Yeah, look, it's a special time for women's football, obviously, with senior ladies qualifying for the World Cup. And as I said, our own league, since I've come into it the last 3 or 4 years, you know, it's going from strength to strength, and I've seen a massive improvement. I'm sure Stephen and the guys will echo that, and Leonard and coach and the players, the professionalism, even though they're not professional, you know, by payment or anything like that, but by the way the players act professionally, and the games, you know, any of my friends that go to games now, it's just fantastic that, you know, they wouldn't have went to a women's game 5 or 6 years ago. Now they just can't get enough of it. They're always wondering when is their next game, and they're travelling to away games, and that can only, you know, be I suppose going forward, that can only stand to the game here in Ireland.
I think, Stephen, I think just that point as well Tommy makes, that Go United is taking over the running of the women's team next year, and I've seen from other clubs that it's almost like you get a bigger family, and everyone is now kind of under the same umbrella. But it also offers opportunities, we'll say, for the likes of, like, we've had Don O'Riordan, who was the Galway United manager, coaching the women, Alan Murphy's. You get these people who kind of go between, and it offers coaching opportunities, and it's I imagine it's very exciting to be part of that, to see where it might go.
Yeah, definitely. Like, even 3 years ago when I came into this league, and to now, the level has definitely increased, be it coaching, preparation, the amount of effort that goes into match days. And like Tommy said, these girls are not professional footballers, but everything structural clubs are trying to do is try and give them as close as possible to that. And be it nutritionists, S&C coaches, access to gyms, GPSs. So as much as we can, we're prepping these players. And then away from the pitch, because even with us, we train in Carlow and through the Thursday nights, and then it's a bit of a travel for some players. So 2 other nights of the week, the girls are gymming and doing other programs as well. So taking a little bit off the road. So the girls are probably going out of the 7 days, or going 5 days at least, committed to this, and never any complaints, never anything. And that's hopefully. And I heard the conversation with Joey, and maybe in the line down, there's par contracts, maybe semi-pro contracts and stuff like that. But the girls deserve that. But at the moment, these girls are playing at the highest level and putting in a massive amount of work, and getting the rewards this time of season, especially when you're in contention for stuff. But like that, the managers you come across, everyone is just so, like how we always say, there's no secrets in football. So you have a chat with anyone really, and we're all like, the managers together are really kind of, we chat to each other, not before matches but after the matches, like that. And it's great to see everyone progressing through, and there's some really good coaches and managers in this league now, and there's probably a lot more to come in now over the next couple of years.
Can I just get you on that? So you're referencing a really lovely interview Joey Malone did, and again, speaking about the connection, Joey Malone was the manager of Galway United when we won essentially the only trophy we ever won worth talking about, which is the FAI Cup in 1991.
Former Athlone manager as well, Tommy will tell you there, yeah.
So you're going back 31 years. But just on that, this is something now I wasn't really aware of in terms of and again we can relate to this in the League of Ireland, but we're now, in terms of the men's game, we're now getting proper money for players, I would argue. This is something in terms of the semi-professional aspect of the game that could have massive benefits going forward if you get it right.
Yeah, look, you've said at the end of your question there, if we get it right, there's a lot to go in, there's a lot of stuff, it's to say that we should get the players onto semi-pro contracts and that, it's just, you would have looked at Galway come out with a figure that they had the running costs for this year, and that's why they've maybe stepped back from it. And that's around most clubs. And you're talking about paying players again, you're adding another, probably doubling that. So not every club is not going to be able to do that. And then what will happen is some clubs will have it and some clubs won't. And it'll become a monopoly with players and stuff. And that's just, we just don't want to happen, because
so do you essentially need FAI help then? Because Adrian and I speaking about Shamrock Rovers getting more for the point in the third tier of European combat than they will for winning the league. So there's a massive reward here, obviously, but let's be honest, it's very hard to fund wages at this level. So how does it work?
Yeah, look, there's funding's going to have to come from somewhere, because clubs were run by volunteers, and we've sponsors, and yourself, if anyone's been involved as a volunteer, you're getting sponsorship in for whatever level of football it is, it's very tough. And players, we've Energia now come in, and the players don't pay for subs, which probably 3-4 years ago they would have to pay €400 or €500 to pay in this league. So every year we're progressing, and girls are getting expenses now, and every year we're trying to progress. So it's just the body of money that's going to be needed to really push on the game for every club. Because what you don't want to have, we have 10 clubs, maybe 11 next year, and then over the next 2 or 3 years, clubs start dropping away, and then the league doesn't come as competitive as it is now. And I think everyone wants to be competitive, and I'm definitely all for it. The players definitely deserve to be paid for what they're doing and commitment. I just want to make sure that the structures, everything is in place, and things have gone past before in different leagues and stuff, that you just don't want this to come in for a year or two and then it just stops, and then we take 10 steps backwards after taking 15 forward over the last couple of years. So it's very important for me. That's my own personal opinion. It's not the opinion of Wexford or anything else. It's my personal opinion. I want to see the growth of the women's game in Ireland more than anyone, but I just want to make sure everything's put in place properly before we jump ahead with it. But like I said, the girls definitely deserve this.
How would you say, Tommy?
Yeah, I just like to echo what Stephen's saying there. Look, there's a lot of moving parts, obviously, that have to, to take place over the next couple of seasons. And we throw out the word, semi-professional very easy. And you see a lot of clubs, even the men's side of it, who've struggled over the last number of years, when it comes down to paying money to players and contracts and that kind of stuff. But we definitely need to do something, fairly soon to stop our better players wanting to go to different leagues in different countries to become professional or semi-professional. And but that's the nature of football. It's the nature of sport. And the funding side of it is going to be very, very hard to come by. We all know what happened over the last number of years in terms of funding, from the FAI and Sports Ireland and this kind of stuff. So, it's going to be very hard. And but the girls do definitely deserve, to be semi-professional and to get paid for what they're doing. But as Stephen said, it has to be right. That's the key. And again, that's my own opinion. And hopefully in the next number of years we'll see that coming on board.
It would help, Stephen. Obviously, one of the things that would help, certainly in the short term, like obviously if players are going to be lost to other leagues, some sort of trickle down payment system for the likes of Rihanna Jarrett, obviously, that would have left from your own side. I know Ella Malloy obviously will get a lot of interest as well. As you said, she's out injured at the minute, but that might be I know it'll be a threat clearly to the foundation of the league, but if it is to happen, some sort of a trickle down payment system would help.
Yeah, definitely. Look, and if you're listening to, even you're probably looking back and the 7 players that did leave Shelbourne, they're all top players. And Piedmont would have lost a couple of players, and other clubs would have lost 1, maybe 2. All really top players. And what you don't want to come to the case, a lot of times, even when the transfer window is open in England, and they can come in and just don't have conversations with the players without even talking to the club, and they could just get a phone call or a text and say that the players are gone. So you just don't want that to happen. I think then once that happens, and there's probably clubs are getting a little bit of compensation around it, it actually might keep the players within the league as well, because I don't think they're going over getting massive money either. But the lower to professional football, and probably facility wise and everything over there, is probably a step, maybe 2 steps above what we have in Ireland here at the moment. And that's just the nature of most of them clubs being partnered in with men's clubs that are in first divisions or League Ones or Premier Division clubs. So they have the facilities and everything at their disposal. But so sometimes you look at maybe the level of football, can we aspire to get to that level of football, especially maybe the second tier in English football. And if we can play the players something amount and they can stay around locally, I think that would really help. But like that, you said, if there was some sort of compensation, but that to be, the league has to go professionals for that to happen. And it's just like Tommy said, it's a lot of moving parts. And you see now even the conversations that IRFU are having with the players trying to get professional, and you're seeing the amount of money they're offering and different things, and it's not going down really too well. So they're a massive organisation, and it's probably a smaller pool of players that you're trying to. So
just briefly,
it's interesting to see how that comes about, and what comes of that as well going forward.
Just briefly on that, Steve. So I've done work for the Greyhound Board and Horse Racing Ireland in recent months, right? So I'm just put that out there. But I speak to people in the gambling industry. Some betting shops say in Britain now, the percentage of money betting that shop on horse racing would be, say, 8 to 10%, right? So basically the betting on sport now is becoming more so football than horse racing. Yes, you have the government money from the gambling industry, which is colossal. Effectively, in an anachronistic sense, gone to the 2 sports on which people used to bet, but not on which they bet now. So what the lads are talking about here is, could you at least not get the government to start putting money into supporting clubs' academies and supporting, getting facilities and getting structures in place such that we can keep players and coaches in this country and build a product from within and reflect the fact that a lot of gambling money is coming from football now, and it's not coming from the other sports. Because I think on an academy level, I've seen myself, even in Longford the other night, to see the reception that the young kids got. I think it was under 17s who won their tier 3 league, and they were paraded on the pitch. For Longford to run an academy is desperately tough, and then to run the women's side of it as well. I think the government really, really needs to look at this and get a proper football industry in this country. We have the money, but we don't have what we could have.
Yeah, definitely. My background would be coming from a volunteer coach, and I would have worked with the association as a development officer, and then would have left that and managing Wexford Youth at the moment. So I can see that point, like, and a lot of times the money funnels up to the top part of the game, where a lot of times and we've made a massive effort in Wexford this year, and over the last 2 years we had an academy of 13s and 15s running in SCTU Carlow, and this year now we have an under 15s academy team that are actually going over to Celtic next week. We've created a partnership with Celtic, so they're going over training and playing over there. So it's something that we've really, if you talked about Wexford Youth before I came in here, there was probably only a 17s team and the 19s that are developing, and most clubs will have the 17s and 19s, but like that academy is very, very important. You're getting these girls in at 11, 12 in your 13s academy, and they're getting to know what Wexford Youths are about. They're getting a feel for it, and hopefully the next 5 or 6 years they're going to have a lot of players coming from the academy. Where at the moment in senior football, you're just trying to get players in. Like, the minute the season's over, everyone's going to be ringing around players trying to get them in, and be it Wexford Youth players, or we have to go out maybe try and get a couple of players, and that's just the nature at the moment. But you'd like to have that academy structure in each club, good investment there, good facilities, infrastructure, and then it's just every year it's just players coming through the system, and that will help a lot, I think, in the women's game as well here, both in the level we're playing at, but also in junior level and schoolboy and schoolgirl level.
Yeah, and certainly most speeches you hear the de facto Minister for Sport, Jack Chambers, speaking about, he often references their commitment to the now wrapped up 20 by 20 or 2020 movement, as he calls it, and it would be good to see him engage obviously with the topics that we're talking about here, and with people in the WNL as well. Tommy, before we let you away, obviously the final weekend upcoming, the FAI Cup final after that, and given the conversation we've been having with you about the progression of Athlone over the last 12 months, like, is it important to get over the line in one of those, or do you just see it as stepping stones building for the future?
Obviously, look, when you're in any game you play, you want to win it, and I think it was Damien Duff that quoted there when they got to the final. He said that he never really thought about it. Now that they're in it, they want to win it, and we're no different, and we'd love to win it. If we don't win it, it's not going to be the end of the world, because I think a lot of people out there never expected us to get this far. So, and ourselves included, look, we look for, people ask you, you said you want a good cup run. What does that mean? Good cup run for us was getting to the semi-final, because we never reached the semi-final phase. Now we're in the final. No, the girls have been fantastic, and I think, we'll reflect on the season. Obviously when the season is over, if we win it, fantastic. If we don't, it'll still be a very, very good season. And I think these girls, if the club can keep this bunch of players together, and as Stephen said, add a few more, well then, these girls can achieve an awful lot over the next 3 or 4 years.
You're not extending Duffer's comments to be a little old Athlone, everybody hates us and we don't care.
No. Because look, in fairness, Athlone are steeped in history and they are a big club. It's just, the women's side of it has been just, it's relatively new, as we said. I always said 2.5 seasons, because COVID was the first, it was a short season, and what we've achieved is fantastic. And
I'd love to see you back on the men's level, Tommy. I'd love to see Athlone back in the old days, as good as you could be.
Yeah, look. I mean, I think it's 2013 when they got promoted under Roddy Collins that time, and we've struggled ever since. But in fairness to Dermot Lennon and Gordon Brett, they come in there about 3 or 4 months ago, and they steadied the ship, and they got some very good results. And I definitely would say next year, it's going to be a lot. They're going to be a lot more harder to beat and better to watch. And if the two guys are in place next year, we don't know. Nobody knows yet. But hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, my own young fella, he's in the 11, and all he talks about is Athlone Town. So Brilliant. I want him to see the glory days.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, whatever way the chips fall over the next couple of days, lads, thanks a million for jumping on us this morning, and best of luck.
No problem, guys. Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot. Tommy Hewitt, Athlone Town Manager, and Stephen Quinn of Wexford Youths. And what an interesting couple of days ahead, and we'll have plenty more reaction to that as well next week. Fergus Keogh, in relation to our chat about Qatar earlier on, says our house might not be in order, but it's a lot closer to being so than they are in Qatar. Okay. Regatta Great Outdoors, a reminder, by the way, at almost 9 o'clock on this Friday morning, they're launching their brand new Freddie Flintoff collection this autumn. To celebrate it, we've a €100 regatta voucher to give away every day. One lucky winner is going to get that souped up to a €500 voucher. And to be in with the chance of winning, simply like and retweet our Regatta Great Outdoors social post on Twitter today. You can see that graphic that was on screen there. It's the one on our Twitter feed, and you can just check that out at Off the Ball. Remember, shop the Freddie Flintoff collection in store at Regatta Great Outdoors or online at regatta.ie. Up next, Alan Quinlan is going to be joining us ahead of another interprovincial in the URC this weekend, Munster against Ulster on Saturday evening. Before all of that, Ronan O'Toole with Nathan last night talking about which out half is winning the battle to be Johnny Sexton's understudy.
What Andy Farrell and the provincial coaches can get out of them over the next year, and how quickly they can progress over the next year.
Yeah, and that's it's a fascinating question and a fascinating subject, in the fact that Johnny is by far the superior totem in that position by a long way. But with the, I suppose, triangle of Carberry, Frawley, Crowley, it becomes very, very interesting in the fact that it's nothing to do with a player issue. What you need to be looking at here is the fact that 7 minutes into a test game, Johnny Sexton goes down, unfortunately, with an injury. You have a triangle potentially of Carberry, Frawley, Crowley to manage a game for 73 minutes, because if Johnny goes down, you don't have Crawley or Crowley together, Frawley or Crowley together, or Carberry or Crowley together. You have Johnny and one other, so the onus is on, essentially you've 10 backs to play 80 minutes, 7 start and 3 come off the bench potentially, so you have your starter and someone to come in. So I think that's what the next 12 months is essentially intriguing for, in that who will take that role, and how will they take that role, and what role will they I suppose be given, because I talk about the Examiner tomorrow in the fact that the November internationals, is it winning the 3 games to be on and end all, or is actually how are we in better shape to be better for the next World Cup than we have been in previous campaigns? Because insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same things over and over again and expecting a different result. So I use that in my coaching a lot, and I try to say it in French to boys, and they're looking at me going, what is this guy on about? So from Ireland's point of view, who they find out in the November and 6 nations to be able to, because if you're looking at silverware, you need 2 in each position. I don't think we have 2 at the minute, because Joey has unfortunately been injured, but for me he definitely has the goods to be a top class 10.
That full piece, Ronan O'Toole, available up on our website and up on our YouTube channel as well. It is 9 o'clock, it's Friday morning, you're watching OTB AM. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning lads, how are you?
Flying it, loads to get stuck into, including Jason Jenkins getting a recall for South Africa. We'll get into that in a minute, but first of all, we wanted to touch on the IRFU women's contracts, that the story that emerged this week. And for people who've missed it, Ireland taking its first steps, major steps it should be said, into full-time professional rugby in the women's 15s game. 29 players have accepted contracts which range from €15,000 to €30,000 and bonuses on top of that. Some of that 29 accepted number were already on 7 contracts. 8 players have turned down the offer, 4 of those already contracted in England, and you'd have to assume that the remaining 4 are potentially later in their career, probably in good careers, paying more than 30 grand, never mind 15 grand. So that's the state of play. Certainly a start, and you have to commend that, Quinny. The 15k number obviously has come in for a lot of criticism. It's very low.
Yeah, it is low, but there has to be a starting point, Adrian. You put everybody on 30,000 or more, and it reminds me of when I started with contracts, with part-time contracts, full-time contracts, and some people actually turning down the opportunity to get a part-time contract. It's a really tricky one, because obviously if you're an individual and you have to make a decision like that to leave a job or change career or go full-time at rugby, you think the money is the thing that's probably it's a reality, because if those players are moving to Dublin, it's getting accommodation, all that kind of stuff, to travel. But you could pick through it and start finding the negatives for sure. But I think it's a real starting point, and having it incentivized and they have to start somewhere. Incentivizing it gives the players opportunities. Obviously, if you were on the 15,000, that you could get up to the higher level based on performance. But Very similar to when I started. It's a risk. It's a risk for the individuals. And I know some players when I started in Munster in 1997, they chose not to take up contracts. They stayed in their jobs. Some of them never changed from that position and didn't play a lot for Munster. Played a little bit the earlier years, but it wasn't it wasn't what they wanted to do. It's a very difficult one, Adrian, here to come in and offer contracts 50, 60, 70,000 euro worth of contracts for individuals, because it has to be real too for the IRFU as regards the game generating a return as well. But I think it's a really good starting point.
Where is rugby in the sense of do the IRFU care enough about that, or do they feel that the likes of Gaelic football and football are basically passing us by here in terms of women's sport?
No, I think, Johnny, it's a really good question. And the last couple of years, I think, obviously, there's been a lot spoken about equality and in the women's game, and them getting more support, particularly in the rugby, getting more of a challenging domestic league, improving that, giving a good pathway for young girls coming through in the game as well, and the opportunities. But it goes back to brass tacks, particularly in a professional game. You have to generate some sort of form of income as well. And at the moment, commercially, the women's game wouldn't generate or balance the books, if you like. So the IRFU have to, and obviously with the independent review after the World Cup, there was lots of issues. And I know a lot of those issues were based around equality and the women feeling that they needed more support and more of an emphasis on trying to grow the game. The IRFU have taken action. So out of that report, and I think Kevin Potts has been really positive since he's come in as president. He's spoken, David Mustafa has spoken about it, and I think a lot of good stuff has happened. Is there still issues? Yes, around the domestic league is the problem here. And the pathway. Yeah. And it's very similar in Scotland and Wales, because most of the Scottish players and most of the Welsh players play in England. So it's not as if we're the only ones that are struggling domestically to generate the game. But it's a relatively new situation in the last couple of years where the high performance level has increased, and there's more viewers now watching the game. It's on TV more. So it's early part of the journey, and there has to be some form of patience. I think the IRFU admitted the mistakes they made, and I think they came out and they're trying now. So they must be commended for that. I think even with these announcements and probably working with Gillian McDarby, who's the head of women's performance, I think there'll be certain feedback they'll get. There'll be certain things that they can maybe do differently or change. But by and large, I think it's a very positive opportunity, and I'm not surprised that some of the women haven't taken up the offers, particularly the ones in England, because it's a risk, and it was a risk right at the very start when I was there, because I remember, I know I'm referencing back to then, I remember guys who had jobs and were saying, I'm not giving up my job for 7,500 a year and match fees. Who knows whether I get picked or not. I gave up my job because I was a mechanic and I was young and I wanted to be a professional rugby player. Rugby had only gone professional. So there's some similarities here to the structure and the situation and the uncertainty and maybe some of the nerves from some of the players. I do like the fact, and I think David Nussafora covered that as well yesterday, that even if you don't take up a full-time contract and you're still selected for Ireland, you will get win bonuses and match fees and stuff. So there's a chance there that they can feel like they're getting some money for playing the games as well, and a financial return. It's not going to be perfect at the start, but it's work in progress, and I think it's more positive. Obviously, you can pick holes in every situation.
That's my job, Quinny. That's where I come into it, and you get to bat them back at me. You look at, you hope, obviously, in terms of games and competitive games, that it starts to bridge the gap ultimately between us and some of the Englands and France of this world.
It's a very, very simple question on this. Like, how easy is it to sell to a young girl rugby when other sports are there? Like, how easy is it? And this is, I think in fairness,
the same question arises for. I think it's the exact same question if you're if you're,
I think it's a hard sell for any kid at the moment, in some respects. So I'm like, if I'm an aspiring sports girl, maybe I don't want to play rugby. Maybe I want to play football, hurling, or camogie. Maybe I want to play soccer. I don't know. So I think it's not straightforward for the IRFU either, just to throw money at it.
I don't think that. I think that's a boy or girl question, to be honest, from my experience. I want to move on to talk about a couple of other things. One of them being the news this morning that Jason Jenkins is in the South Africa squad for their tour up here in the next few weeks. Quinny, we keep touching on this every week, that Jason Jenkins' star continues to rise and rise and rise, and I know that we've chatted about it before, but Munster obviously kicking themselves that they probably had a good idea of the quality of this guy, and injury obviously hampered him to a point, but and it might not be that he gets into 23, but another step up the rung for Jason Jenkins.
Yeah, it is, and it's no great surprise. I think obviously Jack Meenenbar and Rassie Erasmus, and there's a bit of method to their madness here, that they're bringing someone into their squad who's obviously working with the vast majority of these players. And I know Rassie always is trying to think outside the box like that. Can he get any piece of information? They're going to be meeting each other in the World Cup next year. And also he's played well. Jason Jenkins has played well. Obviously, his progress in Munster wasn't just hampered, it was non-existent really because of the injuries. And that's just a bit of luck. They couldn't keep him. They had young second rows coming through. Leinster were looking for someone of that profile, a big physical player. And I think, obviously there's been a fair bit of talk about adding a little bit more bulk to an already outstanding pack of forwards. So he's done very well for him, but it's not a surprise, because I think if you're Rassie Erasmus, you're Jack Meenenbar, you're thinking he's playing well, he's based in Ireland, he's working with these guys every day. What can we learn from him as well?
Is it only about that then, Quinny, as opposed to...
No, I think I don't know. He's played well. Let's be honest. He's played really well, and he's a very physical player, and he's big. But I just think he's bigger tests to come in Europe. When he goes in Europe and stuff like that, it's a bigger test. I'm not entirely convinced at the moment that he's going to be unbelievable and he's this high ceiling that can be brilliant. But that's not me saying that he's not this brilliant player. But I just think he needs to play more games, and if he can do it in Europe, big European game, and consistently, well then. He's the real deal. He certainly has the potential, because physically he's a specimen, and it's not the only reason he's been called in to pick his brains, because he's working with James Ryan and Caelan Doris and Porter and Furlong and these guys, and even Dan Sheehan throwing the ball into the lineup. No, he deserves to be there, but
it does no harm.
It's a great help for them, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Just in terms of the games this weekend, Leinster Scarlets tonight, Munster Ulster Thomond tomorrow evening, and Connacht and the Ospreys later on that night. Just on the Munster Ulster game particularly, after the Bulls game obviously a couple of weeks ago, and making something of a stand, I would say, for 60 minutes or more at the Aviva last weekend, how big of a staging post is it again now against Ulster, and how important that Munster get the win?
Well, it goes without saying the importance of getting a win. They've won 2 out of 6. They're 10 points behind Ulster, so I know Dan McFarlane won't want me saying this, but it's not the be all and end all for Ulster winning. It's a game away from home. They'll be disappointed what happened last week with the illness and stuff, after a really good win the week before. So they've shown they can go on the road, and they're improving all the time. Ulster, they've been brilliant this year. Obviously they're going to miss a number of their internationals as well, and a few injuries, and who knows what the effect of the illness last week will have them, and the travel. But Munster down to the bare bones again. They've more injuries from last week, as well as the internationals being away. So it's John Klein is a doubt. Thomas Ahern is a doubt. They've so many players away. There's talks that Simon Zebo, Mike Haley might be back, which would bolster their back 3 options. But I think they can take a little bit out from last week. That was the concern going into the game, that it would be a number of steps backwards. They lacked the quality at times to hurt Leinster, but they fired some shots, and I think people were pleased with that.
You say people, what's the crowd like to say if they lose to Ulster? Like, where's the crowd's patience in terms of the project?
It's been tested at the start of the season, Johnny, but I think people are being realistic when you see the quality out in the field, and 21, 22 players injured. They don't have the same depth as Leinster. Well, very few have. So there's patience there, but I think this becomes a serious enough situation if they lose tomorrow evening against Ulster, because I think it's like a Champions League qualifications scenario now for Munster. It isn't about winning trophies; it's about trying to get into that 6th, 7th, 8th position in the league come the end of the season, and it would be catastrophic if they didn't get into Europe. So they've got to just start finding a way to win these games that their backs are against the wall, and they're not helped by the injuries, things that are going on. But this is one they've got to find some sort of a way against a very good Ulster squad as well, who will be, still pretty confident about what they've got to go and do. But
I'm sure Ulster are liking the hierarchy of maybe being the second best team in Ireland and maybe shoving it in their faces as well a bit, like.
Yeah, and they beat Munster so convincingly in that quarter-final clash back in the end of May. So it's a big game for both sides. I think we won't have teams till the afternoon, but Munster are definitely down to the bare bones again, and they've just got to find a way through this tough period. And I think it's a bit different. The expectation going to Dublin last week was totally different, because you look at the team selections and stuff like that. But this one will be a bit more demanding. When you ask me about the fans' patience, they'll be a bit more demanding about getting a result at home tomorrow.
Connacht off to the Ospreys, obviously in the back of the Scarlets game, could be a bit of a turning point for them as well.
A big turning point. I thought they were outstanding. Now, to be fair, Scarlets have been dreadful. But they were there for the taking, and Ulster or Connacht, the way they started the game last week, you can see that they've got a bit of zip in their performances again after a really tough start themselves, being on the road in South Africa away to Ulster in the first game. But they're down in 14th, and they've won 2 out of 6 as well. I think this is one now they have to go and make a statement over in Wales. They'll be missing their Welsh internationals, is my understanding. And Connacht are not as hampered, obviously. Finlay Bealham will be gone, Mac Hansen will be gone, Dave Heffernan. But other than that, they'll probably have the core group of their team fairly settled. And this is where they've got to start picking up wins on the road and push themselves up that table as well, because they're in a similar position. Andy Friend will be wanting to get into Europe as well and get up near those playoff positions after a really, really difficult start.
Yeah, and I presume Leinster's barely... I mean, the Leinster kids is the only caveat possibly, but straightforward enough against the Scarlets.
I looked at the Scarlets team, and it's stretched bare. There's a lot of young players in there as well. It's probably the back line that looks... there's a couple of young players in there from the academy. But their forward pack looks strong. If you look at Deegan, Penny and Ruddock in the back row, Jenkins, Ross Maloney, that's a pretty serious back five that they can pick. So you'd expect them to be able to go on the road there and get a result. But it's a little bit unknown with all the internationals away for both sides. And Scarlets have been, dreadful really. They've won 1 game out of 6. So you think Leinster can go on the road there and get a result, and should do, and probably show us more examples of some of these young players that are coming through.
Yeah. All right. Enjoy the games over the weekend. Thanks, Quinny.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
Cheers. 17 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM. I brought the 2 kids down to the Aviva last weekend. Johnny,
what was the crowd like in the end, actually?
Over 45,000.
I know there's a lot of chat about rugby crowds and Jerry turning on that, so
that's a serious number. That is a serious number. We were sat 3 rows back from the front, sort of central enough. Probably not the greatest sideways. You need sideways view for kids, because otherwise, if they can't see the ball pretty much all the time, they're just lost. But we were probably a bit low, maybe a bit too low down. We couldn't fully see what was going on. There was definitely, and I would have been pro the get a drink whenever you want. It doesn't matter. Come in, come out, do what you want. I would have been in that camp, but I have to say, geez, I felt last Saturday almost in one game changed my mind, and it was pretty chronic.
Yeah,
just, like constantly people. There was at one point there was a lot of action. I think one of them, maybe Munster scored one of the tries down the far end, and a couple of people have been coming back from the bar with drinks, and they stood at the end of the row. So stood at the end of the row, in the row, blocking the view of 20 or 30 or 50 people behind them who couldn't see.
It's kind of like.
It was very frustrating.
I suppose my first experience of like beers at sporting events was really in the US, where it's fairly well suited to the NFL or baseball because so little is happening for much of the time. It's not the case, and like when I was at the Longford Town Going Night game the other night, and like the Strokes on Road venue could really do with like bar facilities and all that, but like what they do in Galway and other League of Ireland grounds is you have a bar and you have access to an area, but you can't like just bring it to your seat and stop people from watching the game. I think it's an issue for rugby now. Like I have to say, if I go, I'm a fairly floating rugby fan. I'm the same as all the other tourist rugby fans who has a beer and like probably disrupts. But like it's as a neutral, I'd say it's or as a hardcore fan, I'd say it's a really.
Why don't they go around one of those mobile beer pumpers and just lash it out around? Like, I mean, you're not going to get a great pint of Guinness out of it.
That's my kids through college. Yeah, it's it's not bad. But like, I mean, I found the atmosphere at Ireland Six Nations games rubbish. Like, really did. I was like, there's no crack here at all.
So you're up in the corporate box, Johnny, away from
actually wasn't. But sure, it's all corporate boxes at these games. Like it's everyone has access to.
Box, I'll tell you that. So.
Yeah, but no, I it's good you brought that up. I think it is an issue, definitely.
A great day out, though, I must say. Brilliant day out. Two kids loved it.
Did they like it?
Stuffing their face with chocolate, so it didn't really whatever was going on.
What was the atmosphere like?
That was good atmosphere. Like it being tight certainly helped. If it had been a bit tighter, it would have been a bit more raucous. So it does depend on what's going on the pitch. But it was good atmosphere. It's a perfect kick-off time for bringing a couple of kids to, I must say. 5:15. Ideal.
I actually have to say I've gone to a few Leinster games at the RDS and I really enjoy that. I think I'd prefer that to the Aviva Stadium in terms of it's just kind of more old school, and but again, lots of people having beers. Like it felt like everyone was.
Yeah.
Everyone was.
It can be a bit of a ruiner, I must say. 9:20. It is OTB AM. We're brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember Effortless Shave Magnificent Mo. You can sign up now or donate now at Movember.com. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio. A course across the course of the day, 10:30. It's going to be a live crappy quiz. It's myself versus somebody else, and I'm not going to win. This has not happened yet, but it's very likely. The football kick-off at 11:30 this morning, and then from 1 o'clock it'll be Joe in conversation with Ruby Walsh on OTB Gold. Derry, the subject of Mount Rushmore at 3. Jim Craig, Lisbon Lion, the subject of our Team
James
33.
Craig there for
League Team 33 legend at 4 o'clock, and then OTB Gold with Given Quinn McAteer, all in conversation with Kevin Kilban on our Irish football special, and that's from 6 o'clock. So you can follow OTB across all of our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for the very best and the latest in sports content. After the break, Ronan Mullen's in studio, where we're going to be chatting to Ronan ahead of Katie Taylor's fight against Karen Carbajal. Back after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB GAA.
There's Mark and Richie, and I'll never forget, as I'm staring out the camera here, I was standing here and he was coming in at me with the ball, and he threw his famous patented dummy hand pass, because he's a big handballer, with his right hand, and I literally moved into another parish.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
The Irish Centre for Diversity is proud to launch the inaugural National Diversity and Inclusion Awards. Taking place in Croke Park on Thursday, February 2nd, the NDI Awards celebrate individuals and organisations that go above and beyond in their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Free entries close this Friday and nominations are open across 10 categories, including race and ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ+, and disability. Visit ndiawards.ie for more. And remember, closing date for entries is this Friday.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
Friday morning, OTB AM. Ronan Mullen, good morning to you.
Hi lads, how's it going?
How's it going?
All's well now.
It's a hell of a jumper.
You like it, Jay?
I do. It's woolly and.
What's the end?
I think it's some sort of cursory play at Michigan, the American Football University, but I wouldn't like to be held to that, Adrian.
Counter-ironic is what
Mullen as well.
It's definitely not a reminder of my initial, I think I don't need that on a Friday morning.
Katie Taylor's fighting at Wembley tomorrow night. She's up against Karen Carbajal, and all the belts are on the line. Ronan, who is Karen Carbajal?
Well, probably not overly known in this part of the world, given this is her first fight outside her native Argentina, and put together a decent resume if you're looking at the numericals. 19-0. She's got 2 knockouts in her last couple of fights, so comes with a little bit of form, but it's all kind of relevant or relative to the calibre of opposition she's been fighting, and it's needless to say she's taking a huge jump up in standard here, and that's why the odds are being borne out as such. Katie Taylor's an unbackable favourite in this fight, and she's had a few, given that her CV is stacked with big names and world title fights and unifications and all these different weight categories and so on. She has had a couple of these ones where, although she says I treat every opponent the same and I fight to a level of standard regardless of the opposition, we have seen that can be difficult. When a fighter comes to survive, Katie Taylor can't necessarily showcase what makes her such a standout star, and that's why she went into the Serrano fight actually as an underdog, because her previous fights were quite underwhelming on her part relative to her standards, and she showed that she can still turn it on when she's up against a top operator. So I'd be cautious that this mightn't be vintage Katie Taylor, like one of her greatest ever displays tomorrow, but it's a means to an end, because the whole Croke Park notion is still on the horizon for next year.
There's a million things to unpick there, Ronan, and we'll do that over the course of the next 7 or 8 or 10 minutes. What the one thing that did strike me was that the Serrano fight, obviously there was so much made about it for the very obvious reasons, and the quality of opposition is lesser here, albeit a big, obviously, venue and all that. What this one really came under the radar. It hasn't been a huge amount of chat about it at all, almost.
Yeah, so it's coming on 6 years almost exactly since she made her debut at this same arena, Wembley Arena. And you'll recall then that came a little bit off Broadway as well. It was post Rio 2016, and we weren't quite sure what Katie Taylor's second act was going to look like, because Rio, for all that it was and what's come to pass and come to light in the years since, it wasn't her best display either. And we kind of thought maybe we've seen the best of Katie Taylor, and she did call time in her amateur days. And professional boxing in the women's code, even 6 years ago, is unrecognisable to what it is now. And what she's managed to put together is quite remarkable. So you look at it in that context, that she's gone from making her debut in the middle of a in the middle of a not overly heralded card at Wembley Arena to topping the bill tomorrow, speaks to the strides, and it's off the back of a huge event in London a couple of weeks ago where Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall headlined. So women's boxing has come on leaps and bounds, but to be fair to your point, relative to the pomp and circumstance which was around the Serrano fight, it felt we were talking about that a month in advance and a month after. I think there is just a sense that this isn't quite that kind of occasion, and it's a holding pattern essentially until we get one of those blockbuster fights next year.
Nothing is comparable is the point, and that is very fair. She was talking this week about saying our best, Katie, our best is yet to come. When you, from a technical point of view, looking back over the Serrano, Sharapova, the hand fights, is she mean what she's saying, or is that just fight talk?
It's funny, Adrian. It's funny because anytime I've covered these fights, I feel like I've written that exact headline about 10 times.
Is that right?
The best is yet to come, because she's being sincere when she says it, and the best is yet to come. It seems absurd to say for a 36-year-old that that's still ahead of her, but best is yet to come in terms of what she still brings to the table, because she was saying that ahead of the Pursoon fights, and those were blockbusters. She said it ahead of the Serrano fight, and many people had written her off ahead of that one because Serrano was the foreign fighter coming in, and she produced possibly her career best display there. So I'm not writing her off in that sense. It's the subtext of, I can show up regardless of the opponent. I think there's enough body of proof that she does raise her game dependent on the opposition, and I think that will be borne out tomorrow as well.
Can I ask it a slightly different way? So she's 6 years into the professional game, which is still pretty young. Is she getting better as a professional fighter?
Yeah, so we would have spoken to Andy Lee and others in the early chapters of her professional career, and what would have been said was she was still segueing from that amateur style and trying to implement it in the professional game. People who remember 10 years ago the London 2012 games, possibly the first time many people would have seen her fight. It was that frenetic in and out, bob and weave energy, which is a fast-paced sprint over a short distance, whereas, needless to say, professional boxing is different, segmented differently, and it's a longer distance. So to try and do that over, a 20-minute period is really difficult, and it's taken her possibly those couple of years to realise that I can do that in bursts, but not necessarily sustain. And I think that's where she settled into it. The second half of her career, like if you take the Pursoon fights, for example, the first one, not to say she was found out, but like she did begin to gas towards the end, and Pursoon kept coming, but then by the second fight she'd managed to arrest many of those issues and tweaks. And similarly in the Serrano fight, you look at round 4 and it looked for all the world that she might be stopped there and then, but she still had enough in the tank to take over in the second half of the fight. So she's definitely built up a reserve that wasn't there in the early parts of her career, and I think that's why she's managed to put together such an impressive string of wins.
And you mentioned as well the Croker stuff, and she let it slip. I don't know, did she let it slip during the week, or was it just a deliberate and maybe in some ways obvious thing to say about the Amanda 2 fight been for Croker and then been scuppered? Is that done now, or could we see that on the cards again?
I'd say there's a very good chance those two will fight again, whether it's in Croke Park, I'm not sure. I remember speaking to Ger and Owen after the Serrano 1 fight and thinking Katie Taylor's profile and the context of the conversations around her at that time, where I got the impression she could fight anybody in Croke Park and sell it out, might have to hold back on that slightly now. I think
the living crisis and all that.
But I think that the Serrano fight is a surefire sellout. I think Katie Taylor would pack a big crowd in any arena in Ireland, regardless of the opponent. But
what's a sellout in Croker then for a boxing match?
It'd be in the realm of 80,000. I'm not sure what the logistics are of what the Gardaí will actually allow in for a full event. Like, you could possibly get a lot more than that in there, but
the historic in any event. Yeah,
it'd be an incredible occasion. I saw one of the irishboxing.com lads making the point that she could probably shadow box in there and still sell it out. So
that is a good point, and like maybe towards the end of it, if it was billed as like the last ever fight sort of thing, almost, that might be I mean, it'd be a slightly unusual context maybe to a fight for Katie Taylor, who constantly says she's getting better and the best is yet to come. But
what boxing has taken place in Croke Park historically?
Well, the Muhammad Ali one famously,
Lou Lewis, was that it?
Yeah, the documentary was made to that end, and he was doing a bit of a world tour. The world tour that Elvis never got to do, Muhammad Ali actually did do, and took it around the houses, and it's a very good documentary about it. So, but it wouldn't be a huge cast of fights going back. Like, the professional boxing scene in Ireland, needless to say, it's been accentuated in the last couple of years, the difficulties there, but it's never been a country, like, for all our history in the amateur code, it's not one that's necessarily taken off pro style. You had the Steve Collins years where he great nights in Cork, and obviously the Bernard Dunn years, which would have been covered here on News Talk. And just, it's probably the thing that got me into boxing in a big way, was watching Bernard Dunn win world titles in Dublin. So hopefully Katie Taylor can be the one. Like, there have been fights here, needless to say. Eric Donovan won his European title a couple of weeks ago, but those big ticket events where a stadium fight at the Aviva or Lansdowne Road, I think Katie Taylor's the one to bring all with her in that regard.
Yeah. One last one, just on, it was something you mentioned earlier on that caught my interest. So Carvajal, 32-year-old Argentinian, 19-0 as you said, and I was kind of wondering about the style of this fight and how it plays out and what we might be able to expect. But you were talking about, I mean, what I took, Ronan, I'm not going to lie, was that she's going to be the big Sam here. She's coming in to park the bus and just try and get out of Dodge with some sort of a reasonable defeat. There's no sense here that, like, this is for her, given her age profile as well, it's the fight of a lifetime. She puts everything into it, and there's potentially an upset, or no?
Well, it's a shot to nothing for her in that sense. And Marcus Maidana is her promoter, and people might be familiar with him. He fought Floyd Mayweather twice. He fought Amir Khan, so kind of a big personality banging the drum on her behalf. But yeah, I think it's a park the bus job, as you termed it there, and that's sometimes where the Katie Taylor is a reflexive, counter-punching fighter in many ways, and likes to elicit attacks from her opponents and then make them pay by make them miss and make them pay, whereas she doesn't often get those opportunities against these kinds of reclusive fighters almost. So that'd be the difficulty. As from an optical point of view, it mightn't be the best fight, but it's Katie Taylor headlining a show at Wembley Arena, and she'll be keen to make a point and put on a display off the back of, as I mentioned, that classic show with Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, where Clarissa Shields was basically copper-fassing her stance that I'm the greatest women's boxer of all time, and Taylor would be keen to restore her claim in that regard, I would say.
Never heard reclusive fighter before. That's got to be a little bit counter.
It's that kind of that's the insight you come
like
from.
Homer Simpson. Like I'm just against Dredrick Tatum. I'm just trying to not die here. Like just Homer
in the pub.
Yeah.
Weekend. Ronan, fair play. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million.
Whetted the appetite just nicely to head of that fight for the weekend, and we'll have plenty of reaction to that as well over the course of next week. Johnny, thanks a million.
Thanks, Adrian.
Enjoy that some more. What's the big plan for the weekend?
No plan. Yeah. Terryland Park on Sunday. Hopefully one more step towards the promised land of the Premier Division for Galway United. It's going to be a big crowd. Longford Town second leg. So yeah, if they're from Westmeath, you'd know. So the Westmeath team show
limited options on that front as well. Listen, thanks a million for coming in. Enjoyed your company over the last couple of hours. It's 9:33 and you've been watching OTB AM, brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember Effortless Shave, magnificent moan. You can sign up to or donate now at Movember.com. Back on Tuesday morning, Horse Bank holiday, and Johnny, you'll be back with Shane in studio. We're going to be doing the Gillette Labs performance rankings. I presume Galway thumping Longford 7-0 will be firmly in the green. Quinny is going to be back
first.
To what?
You heard it here
You're
first.
Going to be Quinny's going to be back to talk about the rugby, and we're going to hear as well. It's Westmeath week, basically, is what we're saying, and I'm not even here. Luke Loughlin is going to be in to talk about his story, which is an incredible one, and he was one of the players that came out on the right side of the result that Ronan was talking about earlier on. Ronan O'Toole with the Westmeath County final. We'll have much more as well. Besides, in the meantime, I'm going to leave you. It's Leitrim hurler Zak Moradi, and he's talking to Nathan on last night's show.
As I say, you're born in the refugee camp and you're there for roughly 10 years. Can you describe what that's like? Like, does it feel, it's your childhood, so I presume it just feels like a normal childhood? Like, are you going to bed every night in fear, or is it actually, like, do you look back in any way fondly on those 10 years? Because it was just what you lived.
It was just normal, kind of, because you're brought up in that type of environment. Everything was just normal, and everybody that lived beside you was the same. There was no such a thing as, rich or poor. We were all poor. We were all in the same. Even people had money. They could, the kids could afford the best of runners or best of this, But then make sure their kids lived like us. If we were, playing football in our bare feet, everybody played football in their bare feet, because you even remember when we were playing soccer, there was this rule. Or you're not allowed to wear your runners because we're playing our bare feet because you'll break our leg, for a tackle. So there's all. It was normal, and then it's just till we moved to Ireland, and you were like, there's here, this is the real life here,
So did your dad say in the refugee camp? Would your dad have worked?
Yeah, he would have worked. Yeah.
Okay.
He would,
so you were allowed work and you were allowed make a living.
Yeah, he had a bus before I was born. He was driving a bus in the 80s. Well, obviously back then, my grandparents were wealthy enough. Like, they were they were able to obviously have gold and money back then to have tractors. So they were able to buy something and try to make a few quid on the side, And my dad done that. Drove a bus. Then he was driving a tanker. But everything was, because Iraq was, people don't realise it was. Like, obviously it's a dictatorship, everything is corruption, and like, people were not allowed to work. There was, like, you weren't meant to be going outside our refugee camp, but people used to bribe the police at the police station, because they used the police station and you had the secret service, but everybody used to just bribe them and they were able to just go and say, we'll be back in a couple of hours. But then, because people lived there for about 20 years, then it just became normal, and then you became. And it was the same police people that were at the thing. It just became normal. People started making friends with them, and then it was like just people going everywhere they wanted. It was just kind of slowly. Right. And obviously then the Iraqi government, there was Kurdish people then. They got people there to work for them, a secret service, infiltrate in Iran, and because where the war was, it was. Where the war was, because it was Kurdistan was occupied by the Iraqi government, and they used to need people from that refugee camp to go and translate for them, because Iraq is Arabs and we're Kurds, and the north is all Kurds. We speak the same language and speak the Farsi as well. So they used to take a lot of people.
Whatever skills and talents you had, you were able to use them. And keep going.
Yeah.
So, how did your family get out?
So we got out in 1st of July in 2002. We got out because my brother used to work in the United Nations there, the UN as we call it. He was there working there for a couple of years, and obviously you go for the interview. You're waiting for a couple of months of process, paperwork, and why do you want to go? What's the reason? Like obviously, majority of Kurds that came to Ireland and Europe became here.
So would you have seen, say, in those few years before you came to Ireland, would you have seen friends, their families get refugee status, get moved out of the country?
Yeah, all the time, yeah.
Right.
We used to see it all the time. Everyone's like, oh, we're next, or they're next, because every time every week or every month, there's a different family going somewhere. There's families going to, it's just like we have a lot of relations, went to Sweden, Norway, a lot of them into Canada. I have a lot of relations in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all over. We know people all over Europe now. We have a lot of relations. They were just, every time, where is he going? Oh, they're going there. And some people, they were going to countries they never even heard, It was funny, I never heard of Ireland either. It was you're just trying to get out.
And for your parents, was that a straightforward decision, considering you're living in a refugee camp, to want to leave, to go to wherever, whether it was Sweden, Norway, Ireland? They knew they had to get out of there as quickly as they could? Or was there any part of them that felt, because they had so many other family members there, that had to stay?
There was people there that didn't want to go. They wanted to go back to Kurdistan of Iran. A lot of people did go back. Out of that 50,000, I say about about 40,000, I say, went back.
Right, they took the risk.
Yeah, they took the risk and snuck out through the country, going through the mountains, and But some of them went back, had nothing when they went back. Like my uncles went back, my grandparents went back, and they had to start from scratch. Everything was flattened from the bombs, so they had to start from zero. And so that was it, and people would have heard that then. Some people didn't want to go back. Some people, it was just, everything was word of mouth before as well. There's no phones or anything like that, and everything was writing a letter. People who used to write letters, my brothers be there writing about 10 pages. How is he getting on? How was life? And you could be waiting for another 6 months by the time you get another letter. There was all that kind of carry on, and then people used to be doing the old videotapes, recording, going to the houses, say hello to him, and then you'd be saying, if you go into all the houses in the little area we were in the camp, and then that video, or you post it, and someone will be going to the Kurdistan of Iraq, and he said, oh, I'll pass it on
here's
to
all your cousins.
Yeah, here's all your cousins, and someone else will go to the border, will you pass on this tape to him?
Yeah.
And it was all just kind of that type of way, and people were just kind of seeing if their relations were alive, or they're dead, or they, so they kind of went through all that as well. And
so what was going through your head when you got on that flight to go to Ireland?
It was, at that time I didn't know where I was going. I was just delighted I was on a plane. I was kind of half asleep, didn't know what was going on. It was a different world. We were, obviously we got into a bus from the camp, went over to Jordan and Oman. So we stayed there for about 2 nights, I think it was at the time. And then from there got on the plane to Frankfurt. And then there for another couple hours, arrived in Dublin, and then up there, I got on the bus to Leitrim, and then life just begins there then. And it was we could have been here actually a lot earlier as well. We could have been here in 2000 or 2001. There was a couple of Kurdish families that came before us. We were meant to come with them, but we couldn't come because my dad was in prison, and that was where the delay was. So we couldn't.
And your dad was in prison for, you don't know why?
He worked for an oil company, and there was two parts of the company. Obviously it was divided, but one part was, there was stuff going wrong, or whatever was happening with oil, and Iraq, the sanction was on the country, there was money not going in, and so there's two the director of the company, 2 engineers were fighting with each other. And what happened, they went to court, and the side my dad was on, they lost the court case, so they were all put to prison, the whole lot of them.
For how long?
Well, some of them was sent to 5 years, some was 10. The hierarchy.
How long did he spend in there?
He spent close to about 15, 16 months. He was in and out all the time, He'd be in, he was in Abu Ghraib, then he was in another Tesfira, another prison call in there, then he was in another prison in...
And would you have spoken about that much and the experience of that?
No, nothing. I visited the prison, so I kind of, obviously when you're a kid, you're just delighted to visit your parent, and, so you all got to visit every week, or, we go down sometime every 3 weeks But the thing was, every time, oh, he's getting released next week, or he's getting released next month, or there's all that.
You know that once he comes out, you're going to be able to leave.
Well, that was kind of, we knew, but obviously I didn't know that. Well, none of them. We were obviously kept the older brothers. He kept it quiet. It was just once he got out, he can just get it and get out. And obviously he was in and out, and obviously back then as well, there was no really court cases like here. You have juries, you have and it's a propaganda. It's a bit like North Korea and Russia.
That's as you say, when you're in and out, there's no guarantee when you're going to get out on a permanent basis. So
that's
sure
the
for your
thing.
mother was a huge fear.
Yeah, it was once you got into prison, that's it. It was like you never get out. That's the way Iraq was, and it was it was sad when you look back as well what happened, and eventually he got out and we were delighted. And obviously there was this when Eid Mubarak comes, they pardon a lot of prisoners, and they released them, so he got that kind of pardon on the side of things. But they were only oil truck drivers, so they hadn't done that, and they were just kind of. But as far as when I was going to prison, they seemed alright. They had their own little basketball court. There was about 50 of them. But they were all kind of people at his own age.
Yeah. It's funny how you look at things when you're a kid. You're like, you got a basketball court. Can't be that bad.
Yeah, I mean that was it. Yeah, because we didn't have a basketball court in where we were. There was none of that kind of when they had a basketball court. But at the same time as well, when we used to visit the Abu Ghraib prison, it was scary. I know I'm laughing, but it was very scary. I remember.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I remember like people be, there could be 10, 20 of us going in. By the time some people like, Jesus, by the time I went in and they got out with no money left in my pocket and my watch is gone.
Right.
It was just trying to, every time you were bringing food or something, because obviously the prison officers there as well, they wouldn't be on good money and they'd be poor as well, a lot in the army. And
just a lot of corruption everywhere you went.
Just corruption everywhere. It was just, by the time you got in, you just pay money the whole way in nearly, and then coming out paying money the whole way in, and going to the police station, going to Ramadi. Obviously there's over there, every time there's a police checkpoint, it was always on the road in Iraq. That's the way, like not in Ireland. You've seen Ireland, it's always in States or in the town or over there, everything was on the road, so you couldn't, and that's how Saddam was able to control the whole country, and that's what people even talk, geez, how did he do that? Like, he had nearly Secret Service. He knew what you had for breakfast. He knew where you were tomorrow. He knew where you there's all this. They just knew everything. They knew everything about you. They just couldn't. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't eat anything. They just knew the people inside out, and that's why Saddam eventually. He had so many Secret Service around the whole of Iraq. He had infiltrated every household in the country, and eventually, he didn't even trust his own son-in-laws. He killed two of his son-in-laws. Obviously, remember two of them in '96. Kamal Hussein was
right, and
they legged the Jordan, and then he forgave them, told them to come back, and he made him divorce his daughters, and then he bombed the back out, as I say.
Yeah.
And then he killed them. So that was the thing where he didn't care. He killed his own relations as well. And eventually, when Saddam got caught, it was his own cousins that handed him to the Americans.
Yeah.
Because he done so much. He done so much killing of people, and he slaughtered so many people, innocent Iraqi people, especially the Shias as well from the south and the Kurds, and he just.
Do you remember when he was caught and when he was killed? And
yeah, we were here in Ireland, we were watching it. Everybody was delighted, and everybody was delighted as well. And it was funny with the deck of double the cards. They were all out, all the names of the people that were in charge of Iraq for 30, 40 years. Everyone from the Parliament Speaker, Vice President, every one of them was arrested, and nearly 99% of them were all executed and killed, which was great. And and that kind of, when that showed, and hopefully then it kind of, Iraq has changed since 2003, and there's elections, people have democracy. I know Iraq hasn't settled down yet. Iraq is an artificial state as well. It was just obviously the Britain and France just woke up one morning, they drew a map of the whole crazy Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Syria. That's the way it was back then. But back then, before my granddad and his parents, when they lived, people lived in their normal life. There was no religion and all that. Didn't people didn't fight over
a big factor in their lives.
Yeah, it wasn't a big factor in their lives. Religion didn't exist, or like it did exist, but people weren't, you know, they weren't religious. They were just like I look at it now. They were like, you know, like an Irish Catholic person now, not compared to an Irish person 50 years ago, but compare like now. But now Ireland has changed. Over there, have gone back a little bit. You know, sometimes we create all them over there as well. You know, it's sometimes, you know, the Western, we create these Taliban and these crowd as well. So it's not like people don't want them, but we create them, and all of a sudden you're stuck with them.
Yeah. And wreak havoc for decades and decades, and
then it's very hard to then try to get rid of them, because we put them people in power, you know, and it's the whole Middle East it's a mess. And then you have the Kurds, and we're stuck in the middle between all the wars. Every war is just, we're the losers. And well, in the last 20 years, you know, the Kurds have got a lot of their lands back. A lot of, especially in Syria, they have a lot of land back, and Kurdistan of Iraq, and you know, it's I know, but we're to Turkey is where 20 million Kurds live there, and all people want it. In Ireland, it's a functional democracy.
Yeah,
everybody's treated the same. I have a lot of Arab friends here, a lot of, you know, all sorts. Indians.
All you want is your land and peace.
People, yeah, people. And I don't know, like we'll all get on here, and over there's they have different mentality.
The name of the book, The Life Begins in Leitrim. You're only 10, 11 when you arrive in Leitrim, and you know, it seems just absolutely flourish and settle into the community quite quickly. What about your parents? Like, were they, when they landed, having left their parents behind and left the life that they had known even for the previous 20 years in the refugee camp? How did they settle?
It was very hard for them as well. I say for 10 years after that, 20 years after that, even 10 years we were still here. Their head was still at home. It was always like our heads was here because we're younger, and we'd obviously integrate quicker, and you kind of, when you're younger, you forget about home, but as you get older, you kind of, and then it reminds you again then, you know. They found it tough because they had friends home, they had family, you know, and their relations there. Even in 2003 when the invasion happened, you know, a lot of Kurds were delighted they're going to get rid of this monster, Saddam Hussein, and everybody was delighted. And the Kurdish people, obviously, they helped the Americans to overthrow Saddam as well from the north, and make it a lot easier then. They were delighted, but at the same time, it was like, you know, we're on the phone. My parents were on the phone the whole time. And kind of 2003 and that, the phone started to become a fashion kind of. It was like the old card.
Constantly in touch with relatives. And
constantly in touch. And
again, a different kind of fear, not for themselves, but for your family stuck it.
Yeah, family and relations stuck there. And they were ringing up, and my parents were like, where are you going? And they were like, oh, we don't know which side to go. And then, like, I remember people are ringing, oh, the Iraqi armies are beside us, there's about hundreds of them are coming. They want to change the army clothes, and they're giving us their AK-47 and their cars and all that. So a lot of Kurdish people in the camp then, you know, the ones that were left behind. So they just start giving Kurdish clothes into the armies. These people are from poorer part of Iraq. They were, you know, joined the army, and they start changing their guns and their cars for Kurdish clothes, so they can just snuck back out. This how people do. So then, because obviously if you're in the army, it's like sometimes the story I see with the Russians, if they're at a war in Ukraine, they can't turn back. If they turn back, what are you coming back for? They'll get killed. Obviously there's someone else behind them. That's what.
Just looking for a way out.
And a lot of the Kurds then, you know, obviously they took a lot of the Iraqi army, their Toyotas and 4X4s and their guns, and then they took a risk and they went to Kurdistan of Iraq, a lot of them. And now a lot of them, there's 2,000-3,000 in Fleet there, and now they're still there in Kurdistan. They never went back home. They got settled there, and they got their Iraqi passport after 25 years later, or whatever, 40 years later. They got settled there, and a lot of others went to... Then whatever way the war was getting bombed places, people are like, oh, we're going to have to go to a lot of them are going to the border between Jordan and Iraq. So a lot of them went to Jordan. So a lot of Kurdish people came here. They were stuck in the camp in Jordan. A lot of them ended up here in Ireland in 2006. And they were living in tents for about 3 or 4 years. And they ended up here, and they ended up in the rest of Europe. So some ended up in Kurdistan of Iraq, some ended up in the camp in Jordan. So just... Some people,
there's quite a diaspora now around the world.
Around the world, yeah.
How long you lived in Leitrim for? What, about 3 years?
It was 2 years.
Made quite the impact on you.
Yeah, it did. It made a massive difference. Obviously, life kind of just started and just kind of opened their eyes and learning new things about Ireland. And people in Leitrim, the people were great as well. The neighbours we had, and obviously hurling and football managers through the years. And I always say, like, if you play GAA, you're always, Ireland's very small and everybody knows each other. When you play GAA, you kind of get to know everybody from all around the country, and that's why I have so many GAA friends all over the country. I was in Letterfrack in Galway there on Tuesday, and I met 4 people there, and I hadn't seen 20. Oh, just remember, you were in Carrick. I'm living here.
Oh, right.
But it's mad. Ireland's just very small, you know. And I was in Louisburg yesterday as well, and I met 3 or 4 people. Do you know such and such in Tala? I used to live in Tala, and it was like, yeah, I do. I play with hurling and football with their young fellas.
Yeah.
But it's Ireland's just such a small, and I mentioned the fella. His name's Tom Finnerty. His sister was there, and he was very good to us when we were in Leitrim. And he was an ex-guard, and he used to just show us around of Carrick and Shan, the rules and the laws and stuff like that. It helps. And we met, his sister there. I was like, oh, my brother used to work with Tom Finnerty. I was like, oh, geez, I haven't mentioned in the book. But it was just, Ireland's just so small. Everybody knows each other, and that's what the GAA does. The GAA to me it's like a charity a bit. They're always willing to help, and it's.
How long were you in Carrick before you went down to the GAA club?
I was after the first couple of weeks.
Right.
The first couple of weeks. But the minute we started primary school and we were in, obviously them fellas go around the GPOs around the primary school, it helps and it gets people playing, and I've noticed big difference in Thomas Davis GAA club, gone from 20 teams in 2003 to 96 teams since they put a GPO going around to the 3 little primary schools we work off in Thomas Davis and Tala, and everyone thinks we have the whole of Tala. We don't. We only have 3 primary schools. We have Ballyboden beside us, we have Anns, we have Marks, and it's the people do great work in every GAA clubs where they are, and it's all done voluntarily, and it's what makes Ireland a great country, and everyone's looking out for each other, and I've seen it with our club as well. Everyone's always looking out for each other, and anybody's struggling, needs a job, there's always, ring that fella, he's looking for a bit of work. There's always that, and it's no different down the country when I'm down there as well. It's the same thing, and that's what that kind of GAA connection, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, clearly to your life, because I hadn't realised how little time you had actually spent in Leitrim, considering how much love you seem to have for the place and the dedication you showed, travelling down 2-3 times a week, and starting out when you were playing with the hurlers and there was no expenses or anything like that. You were being treated very differently from the top intercounty teams. That now that you've stepped away from the intercounty scene, how do you reflect on that period? Like, it seems like a period you got a huge amount of joy from, both as a sports person, but just even being able to maintain that connection with Leitrim.
Yeah, when I started, obviously, for me there was no expense. I just wanted to play. I just loved the game and just drive down. I didn't really, expense and stuff like that never came to mind, or nothing like that. I just wanted to play, and same with the majority of lads. But then, obviously, as you get a little bit older, and then when you get a little bit older, and then obviously you're putting a lot of mileage, and there's a lot of wear and tear in your car, and sometimes you're driving down for 3 hours. But then you do the maths, it costs you a fortune going down. It's. Every time you're going down, you have to fill the tank for the week. You're putting over €120 in diesel, and then by the end of the week comes, you've nothing in it. It's just because you're doing that travelling, and then you're not even adding up, having a cup of coffee or a small samba on the way. And
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
OTB.